From the BBC.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Good to be with you. Right now in Winnipeg, it is the start of a very warm weekend ahead. We're looking for highs ahead in the mid-30s or so. We're going to get some updates from Abby, of course, later in the show. And speaking of, let's say hi to the team. Abby Adiemi is our studio technician and keeping an eye on your weather. And Sierra Sanders is our studio director, keeping an eye on your commute. And Darren Morash is our our YouTube producer, keeping an eye on, YouTube. Also, let's say hello to Heather Wells, who's keeping an eye on your news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, doctors in Dauphin are looking for ways to deliver acute care outside the local hospital. That building is going to be closed possibly for months after being damaged by flooding. Now people wonder what they'll do in case of an emergency, and they don't know if tests like MRIs will be delayed. We'll hear what the plan is. And auto body repair shops in Winnipeg say drivers could wait months to get their vehicles fixed after recent hail damage. Manitoba Public Insurance says more than 30,000 claims have been opened since June. Peter Posolipo at Finnish First Auto Body is booking damage assessments into September, and he says it could be another month after that before the repairs are done. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather. Right now, Winnipeg at the Forks, it is 19. We are heading for a high today of 30 here in Winnipeg, and it only gets hotter from there. 34 is the high on Saturday. 36 is the forecast high on Sunday. And ahead of that, some common prescription medicines increases our vulnerability to heat. So we're going to have some tips on looking out for your own health and those in your care with Dr. Samir Gupta. That's coming up this next hour on Information Radio after World Report. Also, we're going to talk about the wildfire forecast across the country. Challenging but manageable. That's how federal officials are describing this year's wildfire season in Canada. We're going to get an update on what that season looks like.
On cue.
Hi, I'm Jill Deacon, sitting in for Tom Power. Imagine performing one of your very favorite songs in front of the person who wrote it. Alison Russo will tell you about playing both sides now in front of the legendary Joni Mitchell, an artist she describes as intergenerational.
She transcends everything.
Cue, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Willie Lowry. Climate activists are sounding the alarm over a new federal pipeline proposal. Last week, Prime Minister Mark Carney unveiled a plan to carry 1 million barrels of oil a day to the West Coast. It's part of a strategy to position Canada as a reliable global energy supplier. But as Nick Logan explains, critics say the cost to the climate is not worth the gamble.
We need to stop literally pouring more fuel on the fire.
Caroline Bruyette is the executive director of Climate Action Network Canada. She says the possibility of Canada producing even more oil will only mean more greenhouse gas emissions heating our planet.
It is not a problem for later. It is a problem that is here and now.
Prime Minister Mark Carney admits that too, but in a video posted on YouTube last week, he said Canada faces multiple urgent challenges, from affordability and economic sovereignty to national unity, and oil and gas production must be a part of the solution.
The truth is, nobody knows how long the global economy will rely on conventional energy. But while it does, as much of that energy as possible should come from Canada.
He says this can be done in tandem with a bigger push toward electrification and developing clean energy sources. But the Canadian Climate Institute's Rick Smith says the federal government is spending too much political capital on the conventional energy side of the equation, when much of the world is moving away from fossil fuels toward renewables.
It is a bad bet for Canada and for Canadian industry
to assume that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, there is going to remain in the world an ever-increasing appetite for Canadian oil and natural gas.
Neither of the proposed pipelines have been approved, and it would be into the next decade before they're built and operational. But by that point, global temperatures are expected to have risen even further, and the scorching heat waves like the ones happening now could be even hotter. Nick Logan, CBC News, Fredericton.
Federal regulators are cracking down on a BC fishing charter company linked to a fatal sinking last month. Transport Canada has seized an 11-meter boat operated by Top Vancouver Fishing Charter, citing registration violations and serious safety deficiencies. The company's smaller vessel went down near Vancouver on June 28th. None of the 10 people on board were wearing life jackets. 1 person died and 6 remain missing at sea. Passengers on an Air Canada flight are shaken up after their plane skidded off the runway into the grass.
Somebody in the back was screaming, "Fire, fire, fire."
The Boeing 737 MAX was arriving at Montreal's Trudeau International Airport from Los Angeles yesterday afternoon during a heavy downpour. Passenger Barbara Edelston Peterson describes the chaotic moment of impact.
We were like tumbling onto the grass, and there was smoke and dirt and grass right at my window. I couldn't see outside.
No injuries were reported among the 156 passengers and 6 crew members. Air Canada and the Transportation Safety Board have launched separate investigations. Canada's prairie provinces are experiencing an unusually active tornado season. The latest storms have sent 3 people to hospital after a pair of tornadoes touched down in east central Alberta, tearing directly through a crowded provincial campground. CBC's Morgan Black has more from Edmonton.
There was people trapped under trees, and I felt so bad leaving them there, but I had to get out. I had my kids, and the scariest thing ever.
Miranda Bardick is still reeling from a powerful storm east of Edmonton. While the cleanup continues, Environment Canada confirms 2 tornadoes tore through the area Wednesday evening. At least one hitting the campground where Bardick and her family were staying.
It's been particularly active on the prairies.
This year, 46 of 57 tornadoes across the country have been in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. That's according to Dave Sills with the Northern Tornadoes Project at Western University.
That many tornadoes up to this point, we haven't seen that in a long time, maybe back to the 80s. It's been that long since it's been that active so early in the season.
Sills says storms like the one at the campground have the potential for damaging consequences. He notes climate change may be a factor, but says it's not easy to draw direct conclusions. Bardick says she's grateful her family is safe.
Because that's all that was going through my mind, was saving my family. And then when I seen the tornado again blocking us, I didn't know what else to do except turn. I knew I had to get my kids out.
Morgan Black, CBC News, Edmonton.
In southern Spain, the country's military has joined hundreds of firefighters trying to contain a massive wildfire in Almeria. At least 11 people have died, several trapped in their vehicles trying to escape. A regional minister called it the most devastating blaze to date. It comes as southern Europe endures another extreme heat wave. The European Commission has made a major preliminary ruling against Meta over its platform's addictive design. Regulators found that the parent company of Facebook and Instagram breached the strict new Digital Services Act and ruled that the company's existing safety controls are completely ineffective. Joining us now for the details is reporter Will Denslow in Brussels. So, Will, what can you tell us about this report?
Absolutely. Well, this is a preliminary investigation. It was launched by the European Commission back in 2024, and it's just released some of its findings, and it makes for some damning reading as far as Facebook, Instagram, essentially the parent company, Meta, is concerned. Now, what the European Commission alleges is that it says Meta did not adequately assess the risks of its social media platforms, essentially its addictive or alleged addictive properties, saying that essentially they are highly personalized recommendations, autoplay and infinite scrolling put what the European Commission says was the brain going into autopilot mode. They say this has huge impacts both when it comes to physical and mental well-being for users, most notably for children and vulnerable adults. When it comes to that accountability, the Commission may issue a non-compliance. It could, down the line, essentially fine Meta to the total of 6% of its total worldwide annual turnover. We have had a response publicly from Meta. They say they disagree with these preliminary findings and say they don't accurately take into account the significant steps the company has taken to protect teens.
And how does this tie into relations with Washington?
Well, this really is a wider, thorny topic when it comes to Brussels and Washington. We're seeing that playing out with a number of EU member states, 10 at least, that are drawing up plans to put in some kind of ban on social media companies. When Washington comes in, well, they're far more laissez-faire, wanting to see these tech companies grow to be as strong as possible. So both Silicon Valley and Washington have railed against a number of these regulatory steps put in place by the EU. So this latest preliminary report from the EU could put them further in the crosshairs of the Trump administration.
Thanks so much for this, Will.
Pleasure as always. Great to chat.
That was reporter Will Denslow in Brussels. And finally, Sony is planning an all-digital future for its video games, and many players are furious. Ruxar Ali reports.
That's really taking away consumers' choice.
When Winnipeg gaming retailer Jade Pierce heard Sony wasn't going to make physical games anymore, he went online and launched a petition asking Sony not to kill the disc.
I put it up there hoping we get a couple thousand signatures maybe.
Now he's got more than 250,000. But it's not just Sony going digital. Rockstar's much-anticipated video game Grand Theft Auto 6 is also set for a digital-only launch in November. Sarah Stang is an associate professor of game studies at Brock University. She says going digital can pose a risk to consumers.
We've seen cases where things have been deleted off of our consoles, our computers, where servers have gone down or where companies have closed.
But for companies watching consumer trends and their bottom line, it makes sense.
Physical games cost more to produce, right? They make more money off digital games. Most people do download digital.
And intellectual property lawyer Steven Selznick points out buying a physical disc never really meant you owned the game, just a license to play it. But that didn't stop people from lending a disc to a friend. Going digital prevents that.
It gives Sony greater control over what was a lot of leakage to the system.
But for Pierce, lending a disc or buying secondhand is part of the fun. Still, it's not game over for the community.
The retro gaming market is huge, and I expect that that's going to grow.
Ruxar Ali, CBC News, Calgary.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Willie Lowry. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. We are in for a scorcher this weekend. Talking highs in the mid-30s, heat warnings down south, and air quality warnings up north. We're going to get the details with Abby just ahead. But coming up this hour on the show, is there any chance for diplomacy between the U.S. and Iran? This week, the countries resumed airstrikes, and although last night was calmer, it's unsure what the future holds. So more on that coming up later this hour. Also coming up on the show, challenging but manageable. That's how federal officials are describing this year's wildfire season in Canada. We're going to talk to an expert about what that means and how conditions might play out across the country. But up first here on Information Radio, there are things to keep in mind when it comes to staying safe during summertime heat. And that includes knowing how certain medications can increase the chances of getting overheated. We're going to speak with a doctor, our house columnist, about that. Stay tuned. Right now, though, at 6:11, let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at your news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, thousands of people are converging on Birds Hill Provincial Park for the 51st Winnipeg Folk Fest, but the heat could make for some weary campers. Temperatures are, as you mentioned, are going to soar into the mid-30s through the weekend. The Humidex Sunday could reach 45. Folk Fest organizers encourage people to get weather updates and visit the first aid tent if the heat becomes too much. Some Manitobans dealing with flooding are wondering why they're not hearing more from the Premier. Wab Kinew visited the flood-ravaged Parkland area a week ago, but he hasn't spoken to media about the situation since. We are going to hear from a lodge owner affected by the flooding who has posted an AI-generated cartoon modeled on Where's Waldo, but instead asks, "Where's Wab?" We'll hear about it in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells at your CBC News Desk. Abby Adeyemi, as mentioned, lots of things to keep an eye out for coming up today and throughout the weekend.
Yes, Corey. It's a morning of contrast across the province as we will be balancing this build-up of heat wave in the southern part of the province. Then we see smoky conditions active as we move through the northern regions. Hence, down south, we have this special weather statements for this long duration of this heat event starting. It's going to kick in like today and into Saturday afternoon, and this would last well into next week. We're talking about temperatures climbing into the mid 30s by the end of today with muggy conditions, and it's going to really make temperatures start feeling like in the 40s from a Sunday, especially along the Trans-Canada Highway. So you need to take it easy if you begin to get the heat impacting you. Then once this kicks in, hopefully Environment Canada is going to issue the proper heat warning. But for now, we just have the statement saying we should look out for this prolonged heat activity coming our way. And up north, air quality warnings continues for regions from the Par all the way towards Tudula Lake this morning due to the smoke from the fires in the region. But here in Winnipeg, it's already sunny outside. Temperatures close to 20 degrees. Expect just a mild breeze today as we push our temperatures to a hot high close to 30 degrees before this late afternoon risk of thunderstorms that we might see in the city. And that's what we're seeing across the southern regions this morning, 14s to 17s, climbing close to 29. But for Winnipeg right now, it is 19 degrees in the city and it's sunny outside.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
It's Abby Adeyemi. Sierra Sanders in with a look at your commute. Hello.
Hi, Corey. I mean, I just can't imagine being at Folk Fest right now. And it just, as the heat rises and it just, you wake, if you're camping, you wake up in a hot tent and it is just, I've done it before and it is, it's a toughie and I can't imagine what it's like this week. So shout out to all the people who are camping this weekend.
Waking up in a hot tent after a late night. One of my least favorite things.
Oh yeah. It is one of those things you don't know until you know. So shout out to all the people out there who are pushing through and going through with the weekend, because it is if you camp the entire weekend, I know from experience, if you do the whole Wednesday to Sunday, it is a slog.
Yes.
That's how I kind of like to characterize it.
It's a bit of a party marathon, if you will.
I agree. Well, so far your commute is looking like a party right now. Things are moving out pretty smoothly out there right now. Commuter line is pretty quiet usually at this time of the morning. But if something does change on your commute, whether you are here in the city or anywhere else in Manitoba, I'd love to hear about what you're seeing. So give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, let's keep talking about the heat. In some parts of the country and around the world, it's one of the hottest summers on record. There are a lot of things to keep in mind when it comes to staying safe, and that includes knowing about certain very common medications and how these can make people more susceptible to the dangers of hot weather. Well, this week, Dr. Samir Gupta is filling in for Dr. Bardwaj, and Dr. Gupta is a respirologist at the University of Toronto, and he spoke to Marcy Marcusa earlier this week.
Good morning, Marcy.
So we hear about illness and even death, frankly, that can be related to the heat. To what extent can heat-related illnesses and deaths also be connected to medications that people take?
Yeah, so this is something that flies under the radar, but it's a more and more important contributor to heat susceptibility in our population. People are living longer, and that means they're living with more and more chronic conditions, and that means they're on more and more medications to manage those conditions. And unfortunately, some of the most common chronic diseases require medications that have an impact on the body's ability to tolerate the heat. One example would be high blood pressure, which affects about 20% of the population or 8 million people. Other ones are heart disease or mental health disorders. People need their medications. They benefit greatly from them. But we are facing a greater and greater challenge with the risk that some of these meds pose in the face of these increasingly common heat waves.
And what happens? Like, why are they a risk?
Yeah, so there's a few different mechanisms there depending on which medication you're on. I would say the most common and problematic one has to do with sweating. So don't forget that sweating is our most effective way to get rid of heat. The problem is that many different types of medications have what's called an anticholinergic effect, which is when they inhibit the signals used by our nervous system to tell our sweat glands to actually produce sweat. So examples would include antidepressants, which can not only have that anticholinergic side effect, but can also directly interfere with the brain's ability to regulate heat. On the other hand, some antidepressants actually increase sweating, which worsens the chance of dehydration, so it can actually go both ways with that class of medications. There's a similar concern with antipsychotic and anti-seizure medications. And the other one to be aware of is the older antihistamine Benadryl, which also inhibits sweating, but is used quite commonly at this time of year for allergies.
You mentioned high blood pressure and heart disease specifically. So obviously, as you said, they're very common conditions. What should people living with those conditions be aware of?
There are many different medications that people with cardiovascular disease take that do render them more susceptible to the heat. One example is beta blockers. Those are used for high blood pressure or abnormal heart rhythm, and they can impair the ability of the blood vessels in your skin to dilate, which, as it turns out, is a very important mechanism that our bodies use to radiate heat outward. Even aspirin impairs that blood vessel dilation in the skin. The other major category is diuretics. So those are medications used for high blood pressure or congestive heart failure, and their job is to keep your body fluids at a generally low level, which means that when it's hot out and you start sweating on top of that, you become very susceptible to dehydration. Other blood pressure pills can actually reduce your thirst sensation, so ACE inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers. And keep in mind that basically any blood pressure medication poses a risk in the heat because when you get dehydrated from sweating, your blood pressure will drop further.
Can the heat actually affect the medications themselves, like make them less effective?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marcy. Most medications are not designed to be kept in a hot environment. So if you don't have air conditioning and your house gets really hot, or for example, if you leave your meds in a hot car by mistake, they can be degraded by that heat and stop working properly. So one example is insulin. Insulin should not be kept at temperatures above 30 degrees Celsius. Similarly, EpiPens, which are life-saving, can malfunction and they can deliver less epinephrine when they're exposed to the heat. So they shouldn't be stored at above 25 degrees Celsius. And the other thing to keep in mind is that heat waves can trigger power outages because of the strain on the grid. And some of my patients, for example, are on nebulizers for their inhaled medications, or they might have a powered oxygen concentrator. And these are life-sustaining treatments. So these patients absolutely need a backup plan in case of a power outage.
What about being exposed to the sun while taking these medications?
When it comes to sun exposure, there's actually a separate type of risk that people should keep in mind, and it's called photosensitivity. So there are medications that actually make our skin more sensitive to the sun's rays, and therefore more susceptible to a reaction that is similar to a sunburn. And some of these are really common, like cholesterol medications, Lipitor or Crestor, that many people out there are taking. Certain very common antibiotics, like doxycycline, Septra, ciprofloxacin, or levofloxacin. People on thiazide diuretics for blood pressure also have to watch out for that. And even NSAIDs, or nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory medications, like ibuprofen, for example, can increase sun sensitivity. So protecting yourself there means avoiding the sun and covering up as best possible and using a broad spectrum sunscreen, at least SPF 30.
You mentioned, obviously, in our conversation here, a lot of different medications. What can people do to protect themselves if they're on one of these?
Yeah, so the key is to talk to your doctor or pharmacist in advance so that you're not caught off guard in the middle of a heat wave. So go through each of your meds and discuss which ones might interact with the heat. What's really important for people out there to understand is that we do not want people to stop their medications. That's not what this is about. For many of these medications, they're absolutely essential, and stopping them will come with a greater risk. In some cases, your doctor might tell you to decrease the dose or even the frequency during a heat wave. But I'd say the most important thing is to be able to recognize the signs and symptoms that heat might be interacting with your medications or the medications of someone under your care, so that you are aware when this is happening and can take those extra precautions to protect from heat exhaustion and heat stroke.
All right, Dr. Gupta, thank you.
My pleasure, Marcy.
That's Dr. Samir Gupta. He's filling in for Dr. Bardwaj this week as our medical columnist. He is an associate professor in the Department of Medicine at the University of Toronto and a regular medical contributor for CBC. He was speaking to Information Radio host Marcy Marcusa. Well, up next here on CBC, challenging but manageable. That's how federal officials are describing this year's wildfire season in Canada. Overall, conditions are better at this point compared to the extensive spread of fires in parts of Canada last year. Here in Manitoba, of course, the north is bearing the brunt of wildfire season. Well, of course, last year it seemed like no part of the province was spared. Well, yesterday, the Federal Department of Public Safety issued a fire season update. And for a closer look at that and what's in store for the rest of the fire season, we've reached Eric Kennedy. He's an associate professor of disaster and emergency management at York University. Good morning.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So what are the main takeaways from yesterday's fire season update?
Well, I think you summarized the overall message well there. There was definitely a desire to share the message that we're prepared and making investments. But the key takeaway was that comparison with the 2025 fire season and saying that we are at lower levels. And that's certainly true at a sort of national scale. In 2025, we saw about 5 million hectares burnt by this time, whereas we're only at about 1.4 million hectares. So that is down significantly. But there's always a lot of regional variation here. So we've seen much lower fire loads than 2025 in BC and Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba. But we've actually seen some slightly higher numbers in Northwest Territories, in Quebec, in Newfoundland. And the 2025 season was pretty above average to begin with. So when you look at where we are compared to, say, a 25-year average, we're actually sort of right on the money at that 1.4 million hectares burnt mark. That's about our 25-year average. And so different ways of comparing and hugely different fire experiences depending on where you are in Canada and even where you are in the province.
I also imagine, like, comparing to last year, which was obviously like extra bad. I mean, it's kind of moved the needle a little bit, right? Because now we're here, and then it was like, well, at least it's not last year, but it could still be like a pretty bad year. I'm thinking probably someone in Lynn Lake, in Manitoba, who had to evacuate last year and this year is thinking like, well, it's still pretty bad up here. So where in the country are fire conditions expected to be the worst?
Yeah, I think that's such a great point because fire is always ultimately regional and local. You care about how you're being impacted, whether that's like our friends in Lynn Lake who, as you were mentioning, have been impacted with evacuation. This is not a quiet fire season for them, or communities that have been smoke impacted. And so a quiet fire season overall, or significant but less severe overall, that can obscure those sort of local differences. And there are definitely folks who have had really dramatic fire impacts, and we've had tragedies involving losing firefighters this year as well. And so I think it's important to remember that big aggregate number doesn't tell the whole story. Federal officials did highlight that there are some regions expected to see higher fire behavior throughout the rest of the year. Unfortunately for Winnipeg and Manitoba listeners, northern Manitoba continues to be on that list, along with Northwest Territories and continuing into the sort of Hudson Bay regions and northern Ontario and Quebec. And so we are expecting that fire activity to continue. But even outside of those regions, all it takes is one fire to impact people and communities and things we care about for the fire season to become significant locally.
In terms of the challenges of forecasting it, what are those challenges and why is it so hard?
Yeah, forecasting where an exact fire is going to be is very challenging. It's kind of forecast built on forecasts. So one element here is the weather. We know that it's hard to forecast weather outside of, say, a few days downrange. And so if you're starting to ask what exactly the weather might be in late August or into September, that's very challenging to forecast. There are also other components that make this complex. So, for example, the need to forecast where a fire started is going to occur. it's hard to know where exactly lightning is going to land, where a campfire might get away, where an ATV might throw off a spark. And a matter of a few meters could make a lot of difference. If that lightning strike or if that spark is into a wet, damp area versus going into dense, dry fuels, that can have a huge impact. And so I think one of the key things we need to remember is that fire is inevitable in Canada. It can be really hard to predict where an exact fire is going to occur, where and when a fire might occur this season. But unfortunately, fire is part of our reality, and it's a question of when and not if.
Well, I'm even thinking here in Manitoba, we've had this unseasonably wet year, overland flooding being a big problem down south. But now I'm looking the next 7 days, which looks high 20s, mid 30s, no rain in the forecast for essentially 7 days straight. Well, what could that mean, right? I'm not going to ask you to tell me that, obviously, right now, but it's hard to know exactly what's ahead. In yesterday's fire season update, officials acknowledged that Indigenous communities often bear the greatest impact of climate change and wildfires. So what do these communities need to respond to emergencies like this?
Yeah, we know that Indigenous communities absolutely bear a disproportionate burden. An example of this is fire evacuations. So we know that Indigenous communities are more likely to be evacuated than their non-Indigenous counterparts. And we also know those evacuations can sometimes be longer in duration and be incredibly disruptive socially and culturally. And so this is a hugely important topic, and there's some fantastic Indigenous scholarship and research documenting some of these impacts. I think first and foremost, this starts with recognizing the wisdom of Indigenous firekeepers and knowing that Indigenous communities have this incredible lived experience and learned knowledge of their landscapes, of their communities, of how to manage and live with fire in those places. And so I think empowering Indigenous communities to be well resourced and well supported in terms of fire mitigation activities and preparing for fire is so important. That shift towards mitigation is also important for everyone. It can be easy to get caught in the focus on fire response and what is fire doing today. But if we start to take seriously the notion that fire is inevitable, that it's a question of when and not if, shifting that paradigm to be more about getting our communities and ecosystems ready for fire events and thinking about how we want to live with and accommodate and coexist with fire, that kind of paradigm shift away from response into more proactive management is what's really critical to invest in.
I know we only got about less than a minute here, but I just got to ask, the following the briefing, reporters pressed the government about the seeming contradiction between the concern about climate change and wildfires and the aggressive policies around resource extraction. So do you believe that the government can square those two things?
Yeah, there were definitely some pointed questions in the briefing yesterday about that topic. And climate change is a critical driver when it comes to fire in Canada. We know that if things are becoming warmer, they're becoming windier, they're becoming drier, these kinds of climate influences as the climate changes, that influences fire regimes, it influences fire behavior. We're going to see different and potentially more aggressive and intense fires, perhaps even longer fire seasons already because of climate change. And so figuring out how we square up the need for climate mitigation, I think, is really important. At the same time, the challenge with fire is that it's not just any one factor driving things, but it's multiple factors multiplying together. So it's climate change multiplied by how we've suppressed fires historically and not had good fire on the landscape, and that builds up fuel. It's climate multiplied by how we're intertwining so much infrastructure and communities and things we care about in flammable landscapes that can both start fires and be affected by fires. These different factors, the challenge with fires that we see today, it's really because of that multiplicative influence of all of these factors coming together and playing off of each other that we're seeing the fires we do today.
Well, Eric, thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks so much for having me. Eric
Kennedy is an associate professor of disaster and emergency management at York University. Time now for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:31, it is 19 degrees. We are going to climb to 30 this afternoon. The Humidex at 34 today. We have sunshine, but we also have a risk of a late-day thunderstorm. Well, eager folkies are piling into Birds Hill Provincial Park for the 51st Winnipeg Folk Festival. And the only thing hotter than the musicians is the weather. Temperatures, as I just told you, are expected to sizzle into the mid-30s this weekend. The humidity by Sunday could make it feel like 45. Zafar Zakrani has gone to Folk Fest for the past 15 years.
It always rains at least once at Folk Fest, so you got to just be prepared for all the elements. Drink lots of water, take time in the shade, get good sleep, and wear some sunscreen.
Folkfest organizers say, rain or shine, the festival goes ahead as planned. They encourage people to use the app for weather updates and visit the first aid tent if the heat becomes too much. And southern Manitoba, including Winnipeg, is under a special weather statement for the weekend, what Environment Canada is calling a long-term heat event. A lodge owner affected by flooding wonders why he hasn't heard more from Manitoba's Premier. The Canada Day long weekend was a washout for Wellman Lake Lodge in Duck Mountain Provincial Park. Owner Cam McIntyre took to Facebook to express frustration about a lack of communication over disaster financial assistance. He noted people haven't heard from Premier Rob Canoe since July 2nd, so he posted an AI-generated cartoon modeled on Where's Waldo, but asking instead, where's Wob?
We've been asking for help from, provincial politicians and stuff, but we haven't heard anything back yet as to whether there is going to be any sort of help for us.
When asked about his low profile over the past week, the Premier's office says the province is sending more staff to some of the flooding areas to help process insurance claims and financial assistance applications, as well as accessing flood recovery programs. Now, doctors in Dauphin are scrambling to care for patients as the local hospital could be closed for months. People wondering what they'll do in case of an emergency, and they don't know if tests like MRIs will be bumped. Bitu Malik is a radiologist with Doctors Manitoba. She says the Dauphin Hospital serves an area roughly the size of Prince Edward Island.
This is catastrophic to our centre. So we have locally about 10,000 people that rely on the services, but our regional access is close to 55,000 people.
Malik says some services are being provided in local clinics. Doctors are also traveling to St. Rose-du-Lac and Grandview. Malik says it's important to restore services in Dauphin, not only for patients, but to ensure no doctors leave. A harm reduction nurse says her clinic's model is highly effective and needs more money to address health issues in Island Lake. This week, the leadership of the 4 Island Lake First Nations jointly declared a public health emergency. They say the region is plagued by homelessness, HIV, hepatitis C, and a toxic drug supply. Christy Muller runs the Anshininu Mobile Addictions Network. She says her team is nimble and able to provide services in both Winnipeg and remote fly-in communities.
We have our own model and policy and procedure for stock medications, supportive medications that we bring with us and get sent to communities. So everything is mobile and travels there.
Muller's team is just her and 2 others. She hopes for sustained operational funding from government. But Island Lake leadership says the clinic's model has been a success since it opened last September. The search continues for a 6-year-old boy who was taken from northwest Alberta. An amber alert remains in effect for Lanakai Morrison. He is described as white with a slight build, long light brown hair and brown eyes. He was taken Tuesday from Beaver Lodge west of Grand Prairie, but RCMP say he was last seen yesterday morning in Fort St. John, BC. Lanakai is believed to be with his mother, Krista Morrison, and her partner, Daniel Ludwig, and another young child. The couple may be driving a 2006 Red 4 F350 with an Alberta plate. Anyone who sees them is asked to call 911. You can hear the latest national and international news on World Report at 7. And auto body repair shops in Winnipeg say drivers could wait months to get their vehicles fixed after recent hail damage. Manitoba Public Insurance says more than 30,000 claims have been opened since June. Peter Posilipo owns Finish First Auto Body. He's booking damage assessments into September. Posilipo says it could be another month after that before repairs are done.
What to say? It's just some customers are
understanding. Some of them get frustrated, and they don't like what we have to tell them. And we say, well, you can try somewhere else, but gosh, like everybody in this industry is completely swamped with all this extra work. So it's just being patient.
Basilipo says his staff have already fixed more than a dozen vehicles. He says the work of pulling out dents is tedious and can take 3 to 4 days a vehicle. You can find the latest news updated throughout your day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at your CBC News desk. Well, lots of talk, of course, about these very, very hot temperatures ahead for the weekend. And Abby Adiemi has your details.
Yeah,
Hello.
let's start with southern Manitoba as we're tracking this major heat event that kicks in today and is expected to see temperatures start climbing tomorrow and by Sunday. By tomorrow, it's going to be in the mid-30s and muggy, and it's expected to get the feeling will be close to 45 as we approach Sunday. Then if you look up north, we still have those yellow warnings in place as air quality warnings continues for the northern part of the province from Flin Flon all the way tracking it towards Tudula Lake this morning due to smoke from the fire in the region, and this is causing poor air quality and low visibility in the region. This changes from hour to hour. For the southern region, we are waiting for that official heat warnings to actually kick in as soon as the south begins to see those uncomfortable temperatures that Environment Canada feels you need to take care. But for now, we just have the statement saying, hey, anticipate it is on its way. For the Red River Valley region, we're starting the day sunny, 16 degrees, 19 degrees, depending on where you are in the city before some windy conditions will build a hot high of 30 degrees for the city today, with that muggy humidex of 34, and we're expecting late afternoon thunderstorm risk in the mix also before we see some clear conditions tonight. Similar conditions across the southern regions. A hot day ahead. We're seeing temperatures between 14 and 16 also. Clear starts in the Pembina Valley region from Morris, Morden and Winkler area. We're looking at mainly sunny conditions there, 14 degrees with a hot high of 30. Late afternoon storms also in the forecast. For the Westman region, Brandon is around 14 at this time, hitting a high of 28 later. Then we switch over to the Parkland region, Dauphin towards Russell. We're looking at sunny conditions at 15 degrees, aiming for a high of 27. For the Interlake region, we're looking at Gimli, seeing sunny skies at this time, 16 degrees. You top out at a hot high of 29. Then up north, we're looking at this breezy conditions, carrying smoke, spreading it around, and of course, a rain with mild temperatures starting the day. 12 degrees to 17 degrees, depending on where you are. For the power Flin Flon, we're seeing clear skies there. Some areas are partly cloudy, 15 degrees, warming to 27. While Norway House is already at 17 degrees, aiming for a high of 27 also. Thompson, we have misty conditions there, light rain at 14 degrees. We should see a high around 24 today. Then we cross over to Lynn Lake. The morning starts with also some misty conditions, 14 at this time, aiming for a high of 20. Gillam is cloudy at 15 degrees with a high of 23 today, and Tudula Lake is seeing light rain falling there at 14 degrees, aiming for a high of 21. Then far north, Thompson and Churchill and the York region, we're seeing sunny skies there, 12 degrees at this time. The high will be around 21. But the main story for today is this long duration of heat wave that has prompted this special weather statement for the southern part of the province as we anticipate a very humid weekend ahead. Right now, Winnipeg, we're hovering at near 19 degrees and we're aiming for a high of 30, but it's going to feel like about 34, 35 today.
Ooh, imagine a lot of crowded splash pads this weekend.
Yeah, and it's going to be muggy.
Yeah, sure will. Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Sierra Sanders, how hot is the commute right now?
It is. I mean, okay. It's hard. I think it's how you would look at it. It's pretty. I'd say it's hot if you are on the road right now, but it's pretty cold in the studio right now when it comes to the commuter line. So that to me, in to say your commute is going quite well right now. I haven't heard about any major backups right now or anything like that here in the city of Winnipeg. Outside of the city, obviously, we're still keeping an eye on the Parklands region there with all of those highway closures, but you can head to Manitoba 511 for an updated list on those highway closures and up-to-date conditions as well. So you can head there if you were heading out on the highways in that area. But if there is something that pops up on your drive this morning and you want to let me know about it, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Sierra. Well, Phil DeMont is here now with your business news. Hello.
Corey, a serious question. Do people in Winnipeg have a lot of air conditioning, or is it kind of you look for wind through the house?
No, definitely a lot of air conditioning going on in Winnipeg. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you don't have as much down here, but when I was in Toronto, you had it, so I just didn't know, because 35 to 40, man, that's just, you walk outside and you're already in a pool of sweat.
No, we are a province of extremes. We're pretty used to the hots being hot and the colds being cold.
Fair enough, brother.
Well, so let's talk about something else that's pretty hot these days, Canada's stock market. It's actually among the best performing markets in the world, and that's actually despite a slowly growing economy and troubles with the U.S. So what's happening there?
Yeah, it's something I wouldn't have guessed to be true, but over the past 2 years, TSX up 55%, one of the best two-year runs in its history. By contrast, the S&P index in the U.S., it's up, but by only 27% over the same period. Now, you might not have predicted that type of gain for our stocks, because since 2024, we now face Donald Trump's tariffs, the threat of the end of the North American free trade deal, and a sputtering Canadian economy. Companies have survived with different strategies. Miners have been helped by higher prices for oil, gold, other minerals like copper. Other companies like Magna, they've become so indispensable to U.S. firms that they now basically survived the tariff wars. They found other ways around some of that. Then there's the banks. TSX banking index up 150% since the end of 2024. Their wealth management business have consistently beaten expectations. That's kind of the stock market back on them. But also Canadians tend to buy bank stocks in uncertain times, and the times are certainly uncertain right now. All this, though, can have a downside. My dad was a stockbroker, Corey, and when he used to say to me, look at the stock market. 6 months later, you'll see it in the economy. And it was kind of true in the late 70s, early 80s. If the stock market was up, eventually the economy was up. But economies in Canada and the U.S. have been underperforming for the past year or so, actually longer than that, but equity markets keep soaring. So maybe we're at a point where the stock market and the overall economy aren't as closely linked as they once were, and you have to kind of look at both differently.
Interesting. But what about this thing is called the she economy, and what does it tell us about the overall economy?
Yeah, it's a term I didn't know about about 3 weeks ago, but it looks at the rise in the number of single women in society and their growing economic power. In Canada, the number of single-only households, 80% led by women, has more than doubled in the past 40 years. In the U.S., the percentage of single women is growing at a pace 50% faster than the overall population. They make more money. In Canada, the average income for single mothers up 13% since 2015 to 2025. The gain in the U.S. is larger over the same period, 32%, and they're better educated. 55% of law school students and 42% of MBA students are women. It's led to greater wealth for this sector or this group. In Canada, and I find this interesting, single women over the age of 50 are 35% wealthier than single men of the same age. But what that's led to is they're delaying having children. The first one now, on average, you have it at 30 years of age versus 26 years in 1989. But all this makes perfect economic sense. Now that you're better educated, by delaying your childbirth, women can have their careers, start them earlier. They save more than men, so they can save the money, save the money up faster, and then it grows quicker. So you end up with more cash when you're older. I mean, in the old days, when my mom worked at the dental school at Dalhousie, it didn't really matter that much how long you stay. You were before you had kids, because your career wasn't the same way. But now with better educated women earning more money, their careers can be lucrative early on, and so they're delaying having children as a result.
Interesting. So finally here, why does NASA want to put internet on the moon?
Yeah, I know. As early as this year, NASA and Nokia want to start laying down the infrastructure for a communications network in space, starting, right with the moon. So SpaceX is sending up a rocket later this year to go to the moon. On board will be a 4G internet system designed by Nokia. The system will deploy up there and give orders to 2 lunar vehicles. They're running around looking for ice up there. Moon ice, apparently, you can use to make breathable oxygen and even fuel for Mars missions if you base them on the moon. NASA also wants to get rid of the current system of radio communications that astronauts use is not as reliable. Eventually, the 4G network could develop into an off-Earth internet. And what they want to use that for? Planet colonists. If you're going to Mars or whatever, you can bounce your signal off of the moon. Sounds kind of one of those things that you'd be looking on a streaming service right now, a bit out there. But look at it this way. When I was a kid, Star Trek was predicting flip phones, and we're way past that now.
Well, Phil, thanks very much.
Thanks, Corey.
That is Phil DeMont with your business news. Well, up next here on CBC, we got some music for you. Bahama's most latest album is called My Second Last Album, but that doesn't mean he's given up on music yet. He's touring the country this summer. He'll be in Winnipeg September 25th. So here he is now with The Bridge on CBC Radio 1.
Oh, child, don't say sorry. Run wild, though I might worry. Let them do as they do. Let them find their own way. There's so much to be gained now from making your own mistakes. Take me to the bridge and let me walk upon the water. Take me to the bridge and let me walk upon the water. Run free. So much to discover. You don't need me or your mother. Let them go where they go. Let them find their own way. I'm right here beside you to love and gently guide you. Take me to the bridge and let me walk upon the water. Take me to the bridge and let me walk upon the water. Take me to the bridge and let me walk upon the water. Take me to the bridge and let me walk upon the water.
That's Bahamas with The Bridge. And fun fact about that song, that is one of the few quote-unquote grown-up songs that my 3-year-old actually requests now and then. That's because I told him that it's about the Billy Goat's Gruff and the troll. And every once in a while we're in the car driving, he'll request it and he'll be like, Dad, is that the troll singing or is that the goat singing? I'll be like, it's the troll singing. He has a pretty good dance to it too every now and then when we put it on. That is Bahamas, of course, with The Bridge. And he's actually going to be in Winnipeg on September 25th at the Burton Cummings Theatre with Mario Buckley opening for him. Well, 6:50 right now, and at the Forks, we are sitting right now at 19, but we are going to be warming up to 30 degrees today here in Winnipeg. Well, next up here on CBC, the prospect for peace in the Middle East appears to be crumbling, and the American military has targeted sites inside Iran, and Iran has responded with attacks on U.S. positions in other Gulf countries. The escalation is making efforts to restart talks more difficult and raising concerns about a wider conflict. And for more on this, we've reached Renan Levine. He's a professor of political science at the University of Toronto. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what's behind this latest escalation of violence here?
Right. Well, so first, I think it's important to note that while it's morning here in North America, it's late afternoon now in the Middle East, and it's been a quiet and seemingly peaceful day. So we're talking about literally yesterday's news, and going back to this weekend's news, where what happened was that 3 ships at least 2 of them in Omani territorial waters in the Straits of Hormuz, were attacked by Iran. The U.S. retaliated, and that led to a series of escalating attacks yesterday, but quiet today. And I think what makes that clear is that it's not attacks or negotiations. These attacks are part of the negotiating dance. I'm not sure if it's Billy Goat Gruff or the Troll, but this is the dance that these major players are doing. And the reason why they're doing it is to say, look, you need to make some concessions, you need to make some compromises, or else we're willing to resume fighting. And so we've seen in the last few days, both sides send that message that we're willing to resume fighting.
So then what are the main goals driving both the U.S. and Iran right now?
Well, both of them are looking for leverage in the negotiations. And one of the things that's really interesting is that the U.S. obviously can do a lot of damage to Iran directly. Iran doesn't have that capability. But Iran is basically saying, look, we just buried in a big state funeral the former supreme leader. Our regime is still here. We don't seem to be going anywhere. We're not exactly democratic. We can weather a lot of adversity while still keeping our power. Whereas Donald Trump and the Republicans are facing the midterm elections in November. So do you want to face those elections with rising gas prices? Good luck with that. So that's the main lever that Iran is pulling. We're trying to restrict traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, which will either then give them directly money for tolls that are being paid, as well as putting pain on the U.S. and potentially forcing the American administration to make some concessions.
And how serious is the rest of this could expand, though, into a wider regional conflict?
That's a great question, and I think that's a real fear, because yesterday we saw missiles sent as far as Jordan. All Arab states that are American allies. So there is a risk that these states are going to say, look, enough is enough, and they're going to tell the U.S. that they would support broadening the war, maybe having ground troops come in and trying to put a stop to Iranian capability of firing these missiles at its neighbors. But we're not hearing that, and that's crucial.
I got to say, Renan, it's starting to feel like a little bit deja vu. Like it's no offense to you, but it feels like we've had this conversation like a lot of times since March, right? Where the you hear about a lull. There's somehow some chance of peace, but all of a sudden strikes resume, and then all of a sudden Strait of Hormuz closes. Like this feels like are we just in for an endless cycle? For the next little while, or do you see something that could actually lead to real lasting peace in the region?
That's a great question. It really does. I assigned to my students an op-ed that was written in 2008 about U.S. foreign policy towards Iran, and it's still pertinent today. This is in some ways insane. Like, the world is so different, but really what we're talking about is not just a 132-day war. We're talking about 45 plus years of hostility between Iran and U.S. And so, yeah, it does feel like deja vu, and it's not clear how either country is going to dramatically step off of this cycle. Clearly, they're in negotiations, but the ceasefire that we've enjoyed for about a month now, was conditional on, well, the big issues we're going to discuss down the road. Well, here we are down the road, and yes, because those discussions are still ongoing, because there's still unresolved issues, instead of counseling, we have war.
So what do you be watching now as this situation continues?
Well, I think the main thing I'm looking for is to see, well, are we going to complain about deja vu, or is it each day actually not a repeat of the previous day, or each week a repeat of the cycle, but is it getting worse? Is the conflict escalating? Right now, we're not seeing that, and we're not hearing many voices calling for that to happen. So there's a lot of bluster coming out of Washington and Tehran, but as long as both sides are blaming the other for the end of the ceasefire, that to me is a crucial signal. Because if they're blaming the other side for ending the ceasefire, implied in that is we'd like to get back to a ceasefire, as opposed to this is really over and we're going on to full-on active war footing.
So one little string of hope to maybe pull on there. Well, Renan, thanks for your time.
A day of hope.
A day of
hope.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That is Renan Levine. He's a professor of political science at the University of Toronto. Well, 6:57 right now, and still ahead here on the show. The World Cup has power to captivate, but we're going to talk about what this moment means for displaced people here in Manitoba and what it means as proud Manitobans to watch their team from their home country. Sophia Peralta-Baron, one of our associate producers, dug into that and spoke with some people there. That's coming up after 7. But right now, though, let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, thousands of people are converging on Birds Hill Provincial Park for the Folk Festival, but it's the heat that could make for some weary campers. Temperatures are expected to soar into the mid-30s starting tomorrow, and the humidex by Sunday could reach 45. The Folk Fest is encouraging people use the app for weather updates and visit the first aid tent if the heat becomes just a little too much. Auto body repair shops in Winnipeg say drivers could wait months to get their vehicles fixed after recent hail damage. Manitoba Public Insurance says more than 30,000 claims have been opened since June. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather. Commute is looking pretty solid so far. Of course, still flooding on highways in the Parkland region. So check Manitoba 511 before you head out if you are in that area here in Winnipeg. Pretty quiet. You can call Sierra, though, on the commuter line if you do see something. 204-788-3093 is the number to call. Also coming up this next hour, maybe an interview that might cool you off just a little bit. A local cider company might find your backyard apples very appealing. You see what I did there? The owner of Next Friend Cider is going to join us to tell us why he wants your backyard fruit to turn it into something a little more refreshing. That's coming up this next hour on Information Radio. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Stay tuned. We'll be back after World Report.
Influencer is. They are on the rise all over social media, showing what life looks like when you embrace solitude. We'll talk about what this means at a time when people are grappling with loneliness. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Willie Lowry. A new investigation shows that some of Canada's laws are being passed by a nearly empty red chamber. A CBC News analysis of Senate attendance records reveals that dozens of members are routinely missing key votes, with some legislation passing with barely half the room voting. For more on who's skipping out, we go to the CBC's JP Tasker in Ottawa. So JP, what have you been finding?
We crunched the numbers to find out just how often senators were casting votes in the upper house, and what we found is regular absenteeism. Dozens of senators are routinely missing big votes on some of the government signature legislation. In some cases, only 50, 60, 70 senators out of the 95 or so sitting members are weighing in on whether to pass bills. Bills like hate crime legislation, the budget, spending measures, changes to immigration rules, and the like. In some instances, only a little more than half half of all members of the Red Chamber are there for some consequential moments. In the 12 months following the last federal election, the Senate sat for just 76 days. Only 8 senators have had a perfect attendance record over that period. The rest were away anywhere from 1 to 54 days out of the 76 for other public business, for time off, or because they were sick. And it's raising concerns. The Conservative Senate Leader Leo Husako is telling me if attending the Senate for 3 days a week is too burdensome, then it raises legitimate questions about whether these senators are in the appropriate place for them.
Thanks, JP.
Thank you.
The CBC's JP Tasker in Ottawa. Climate activists are sounding the alarm over a new federal pipeline proposal. Last week, Prime Minister Mark Carney unveiled a plan to carry 1 million barrels of oil a day to the West Coast. It's part of a strategy to position Canada as a reliable global energy supplier. Nick Logan explains.
We need to stop literally pouring more fuel on the fire.
Caroline Bruyette is the executive director of Climate Action Network Canada. She says the possibility of Canada producing even more oil will only mean more greenhouse gas emissions heating our planet.
It is not a problem for later. It is a problem that is here and now.
Prime Minister Mark Carney admits that too, but in a video posted on YouTube last week, he said Canada faces multiple urgent challenges, from affordability and economic sovereignty to national unity, and oil and gas production must be a part of the solution.
The truth is, nobody knows how long the global economy will rely on conventional energy. But while it does, as much of that energy as possible should come from Canada.
He says this can be done in tandem with a bigger push toward electrification and developing clean energy sources. But the Canadian Climate Institute's Rick Smith says the federal government is spending too much political capital on the conventional energy side of the equation, when much of the world is moving away from fossil fuels toward renewables.
It is a bad bet for Canada and for Canadian industry to assume that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, there is going to remain in the world an ever-increasing appetite for Canadian oil and natural gas.
Neither of the proposed pipelines have been approved, and it would be into the next decade before they're built and operational. But by that point, global temperatures are expected to have risen even further, and the scorching heat waves like the ones happening now could be even hotter. Nick Logan, CBC News, Fredericton.
Canada's prairie provinces are experiencing an unusually active tornado season. The latest storms have sent 3 people to hospital after a pair of tornadoes touched down in east central Alberta, tearing directly through a crowded provincial campground. The CBC's Morgan Black has more from Edmonton.
There was people trapped under trees, and I felt so bad leaving them there, but I had to get out. I had my kids, and scariest thing ever.
Miranda Bardick is still reeling from a powerful storm east of Edmonton. While the cleanup continues, Environment Canada confirms 2 tornadoes tore through the area Wednesday evening, at least one hitting the campground where Bardick and her family were staying.
It's been particularly active on the prairies.
This year, 46 of 57 tornadoes across the country have been in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. That's according to Dave Sills with the Northern Tornadoes Project at Western University.
That many tornadoes up to this point, we haven't seen that in a long time, maybe back to the 80s. It's been that long since it's been that active so early in the season.
Sills says storms like the one at the campground have the potential for damaging consequences. He notes climate change may be a factor, but says it's not easy to draw direct conclusions. Bardick says she's grateful her family is safe.
Because that's all that was going through my mind, was saving my family. And then when I seen the tornado again blocking us, I didn't know what else to do except turn. I knew I had to get my kids out.
Morgan Black, CBC News, Edmonton.
A super typhoon is churning through the Pacific Ocean this morning. Typhoon Bavi spans nearly 1,000 kilometers across and is currently tracking to slam into southwestern Japan and northern Taiwan before making landfall in eastern China. For an update on the storm's path, we're joined now by Laura Westbrook in Hong Kong. So, Laura, what's the latest?
Well, this is the strongest storm of the year so far. Bavi has been moving across the Pacific Ocean, and according to the Central Weather Administration, it's packing maximum sustained wind speeds of around 162 kilometers per hour. Now, that is slower than on Thursday, and forecasters say that the typhoon is likely to continue weakening, but it's expected to bring with it strong winds and a lot of rain, particularly to the mountainous areas in central and northern Taiwan. And of course, that carries with it risks of flooding and landslides. And according to local media in Taiwan, this is the largest typhoon Taiwan has seen since 1995. It's expected to pass to the north of Taiwan, also impacting Japan's southwestern islands before moving on to eastern China.
So how are the countries that fall in the typhoon's path preparing?
Well, in Japan, in those remote islands to the southwest, they are part of the Okinawa prefecture, these remote Sakishima islands. Their schools and offices were closed in some areas, forecasters warning of high waves, rain, landslides. They've also grounded a number of airlines, and residents have also reportedly been stocking up on supplies. In Taiwan, also schools and businesses have been closed on Friday. The local government and officials have also been providing residents with stations to collect sandbags, fishing boats in the harbour of the port city of Geelong. They've been returning to harbour. More than 1,000 people have been evacuated, 20,000 military personnel also on standby. This typhoon is expected to hit the eastern coast of China over the weekend.
Thanks so much for this, Laura. That's Laura Westbrook joining us from Hong Kong. And finally, a highly charged funeral in Iran is fueling a global security crisis. Former Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was laid to rest yesterday, 4 months after he was killed in a U.S.-Israeli airstrike. Mourners openly chanted for the death of Donald Trump as Western intelligence investigates a fresh Iranian plot to assassinate the U.S. president. From London, the CBC's Anna Cunningham reports.
Late into the night, carrying the coffin draped in the Iranian flag, mourners loyal to the Islamic Republic massed at the burial site in the eastern city of Mashhad, the birthplace of the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Weeping and beating their chests, mourners lined the streets as his coffin was carried into the shrine of Imam Reza, the holiest site for Shia Muslims in Iran. The one person missing from public view was the late Supreme Leader's successor, his son Mushtaba. He has not been seen at any funeral or burial ceremonies. Amongst the crowd outside the burial shrine, there were calls for revenge, chants too calling for death to the US President Donald Trump. The security of President Trump is being taken seriously. It didn't go without notice that he changed planes in the UK after leaving the NATO summit.
I'm number one on the kill list for Iran,
he said before leaving Ankara Wednesday. US media is reporting that Israel shared intelligence with the US that Iran had devised a new plan to allegedly assassinate President Trump. Some question this, suggesting it could be an effort by Israel to sway Trump's decision-making on any military action against Iran. After 2 days of attacks from both sides, it's understood that attempts are being made to get diplomacy back on track as the fragile ceasefire hangs in the balance. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Willie Lowry. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Well, we are in for another scorcher today and throughout the weekend with temperatures in the mid-30s here in southern Manitoba. And Winnipeg Folk Fest has begun along with some heat warnings. So coming up, we're going to hear from the festival's executive director on how audiences can try to beat the heat and what things they have in store to help out. That's coming up later this hour. Also this hour on the show, it's a cider company, but also a food waste initiative. We're going to hear why a local cider company is looking to the community to make sure no backyard fruit is left behind. But first up here on the show, can you love a country's soccer team but not its politics? This question comes up as the FIFA World Cup continues, and for some Manitobans, the tournament brings some complicated feelings about their home country to the surface. Their stories up next here on Information Radio. But right now, though, 7:11, let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at your news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, some Manitobans dealing with flooding are wondering why they're not hearing more from the Premier. Wab Kinew visited the flood-ravaged parkland a week ago, but hasn't spoken to media about the situation since. We're going to hear from a lodge owner affected by flooding. He's posted an AI-generated cartoon modeled on Where's Waldo, but instead of asking Where's Waldo, he asks Where's Wab? Doctors in Dauphin are looking for ways to deliver acute care outside the local hospital. The building is going to be closed possibly for months, and specialized equipment was damaged by the flooding, and people wonder where they're going to go in case of an emergency. They also don't know if tests like MRIs are going to be delayed. More on that story as well, coming up in our next news at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thanks.
That is Heather Wells at your CBC News desk. Abby Adeyemi is in with a look at your very warm forecast.
Yeah, to start the weekend, we have this major heat event on its way for southern Manitoba that's going to be kicking in Saturday afternoon, and this will last well into next week. We're talking about temperatures climbing into the mid-30s by the end of the weekend, with the humidity as of Sunday getting close to 45 degrees along the Trans-Canada Highway, especially if you're in that part of the province. And things would ease slightly, maybe for the daily highs, but just be prepared for temperatures in the upper 20s and low 30s for the most of the week, for most of next week. Then up north, we have this yellow air quality warning that continues for regions around Flin Flon all the way towards Churchill and Tudula Lake this morning due to wildfire smoke causing poor air quality. But right now in Winnipeg, we're seeing 20 degrees. It's sunny outside. We're aiming for a high of 27 today. We're expecting a risk of late day thunderstorms sometime this afternoon, and that's the condition we're seeing across southern Manitoba, 16s to 20s and highs close to 30 degrees for most of the region. Up north, we'll see temperatures warm up close to 27 in the northern regions, but right now it's sunny and 20 outside in Winnipeg.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Sierra, how's the commute going?
Oh, it is pretty quiet out there, Corey. I think people are, officially in summer mode, if that makes sense, taking the Fridays off or on summer vacation. So it's pretty quiet so far on the CBC commuter line. Not many, if at all, no calls on the CBC commuter line this morning so far. But I do want to remind folks about the highways in the Parkland region. There are still quite a few highway closures, so you want to make sure you head to Manitoba 511 for up-to-date information on the closures and any situations going on out there. As well, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are back in action tonight at Princess Auto Stadium. They are taking on the Toronto Argonauts, hoping to get another win tally. They had a little bit of a shorter break because they did play late last week. So a little bit of a shorter break. Drew Brown playing his first game with the Bombers since he came back to the team as Zach Collaros is injured. So it should be a pretty interesting game, and also another hot event today here. I feel like it's a tale of two cities. You have the folks out at Winnipeg Folk Festival, and then you have the people out at the Bomber game tonight as well. So lots of events happening here in Winnipeg. So you want to remember that if you're in the area, traffic will pick up closer to kickoff at 7:30. So keep that in mind there if you're in the city of Winnipeg. But for anything that's going on your commute right now, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. The number's 204-788-3093.
Well, the FIFA World Cup puts a spotlight on numerous countries, and a lot of Manitobans still call those nations home, even if they have a complex relationship with where they were born. So what's going through their minds as they cheer on their home countries? CBC Sofia Peralta Baron talked to some Manitobans about that complicated feeling and joined Marcy Marcusa to talk about it.
Good morning. morning, Sophia.
Hi, Marcy. How are you?
I'm well. So what got you interested in this story?
Well, like many Latino kids, I grew up hearing this.
Go, 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 go. Who is that?
That's my dad.
I love that.
Yeah,
Love
that's my dad celebrating Colombia winning. And ultimately, when the game is on, my family's eyes are glued. And the reasons why my parents left fade into the background. When I was older, I learned that we fled because of violence and political instability. And after what my parents experienced, they never intend on going back. But Colombia is still part of who they are, and that national pride bubbles to the surface whenever they're watching their home country play. So I wanted to know, what does that look like for other Manitobans?
I love that this story starts from a personal place for you. Who did you speak with?
Well, I posted about these feelings on Instagram to start, and 26-year-old Manitoban Omar Beleha messaged me. He left Egypt when he was 3 years old for economic reasons.
The situation in Egypt wasn't the greatest. Yes, you can go to universities in Egypt, but you'd be working long hours, and at the very end, the salary is not going to be sufficient at all to provide you with a normal or standard living. You'd have to even work 2-3 jobs to actually get there.
So Omar and his family continue to visit Egypt every year, and over time, he learned what soccer meant to his home country.
The streets can just turn empty when Egypt plays. Everyone is watching either together with their families or like at a coffee shop or restaurants. They all just unite. If it's a win for Egypt, then the streets just get full with people just cheering for Egypt, regardless of if it was a friendly game, if it was a big tournament. People love soccer, and I want to say they live soccer, especially when the national team plays and represents the country.
And despite not living there for 23 years, he's always kept cheering for the Egyptian soccer team.
And why not this year? Because, I mean, my goodness, what a tournament they have had. They played in Vancouver. They were one of the teams that played here in Canada for the World Cup. Did he do anything special for that?
Oh, Marcy, well, when it was announced that Vancouver was going to be one of the home stadiums. And that Egypt would be playing there, he booked a flight and got a stadium ticket right away. This is how he described the moment.
A game day was insane. There was an Egypt march to the stadium ahead of the game, got dressed into the Egypt jersey, face painted ourselves, headed to the march, and the amount of people coming from all over Canada, people coming from the U.S., all the way from Egypt. We were all together regardless of political views, religious views. Everyone was just chanting for Egypt in one voice. The feeling of being there with literally all these Egyptians, that feeling is different. It just hits you in a weird way.
So, Egypt ended up winning that game over New Zealand 3-1. But unfortunately for Omar and many other Egyptian fans, they were eliminated in a game against Argentina Tuesday.
But man, they should hold their heads high because almost not.
Absolutely.
Almost not, Sophia. I watched that.
Yeah.
All of this, though, must be an incredible feeling for people like Omar. And as you started by saying, others. Who else did you talk to that can relate to that in Manitoba?
Well, I reached out to Godi Katembo. He's the founder of Canada African Cup of Nations soccer tournament. He left the Congo when he was only 8 years old.
There's not a lot of good memories, but because we were fleeing from the conflict that was going on at the moment, we packing whatever we had, just a clothes, what we had on, and left everything behind, and we never looked back since then.
So from there, Godi and his family stayed in a refugee camp in Uganda for 5 years. Although times were tough, there is one thing that kept him going.
I mean, we were going through all kind of issues like lack of food, clean water, medical supplies, and all of these other things that when people are in a refugee, you're in a strange land, you didn't speak the language, you just had nobody. And when we started playing football, even with the locals, it created a sense of friendship. In Uganda, they speak English, in Congo, French, and we could only communicate through the game of soccer. And kind of help us to start learning the new language, integrating in the Ugandan culture and in Ugandan society. So it's a sense of hope and, again, sense of aspiration to understand that the game of football, no matter where you are, where you come from, your religious background, there's always space for everyone.
What a wonderful sentiment that is.
I know.
How did Gody feel when then he saw Congo play in the World Cup?
Here's what he had to say.
It meant a lot to me, and I'm emotional each time I think about it. After 52 years, meant for Congo is the ability to put Congo on a map, ability to speak about injustice of what is happening in a country, because some people, they only know us about our minerals, but they don't know us as people because of so much conflict and so much war that has happened in the country. So what it meant to me, I really, as Congolese, it gave us a sense of pride. And as someone who, like me, who left the country when I was 7 or 8 years old, who did not have a positive thing associated with the country, now seeing them at the World Cup, it gave me a sense of to be able to embrace my culture and my heritage. But when we saw them at the World Cup, it gave us another reason, another hope to say, this is why you should embrace your nation.
So as you heard in that clip there, Gody says the World Cup gives people a chance to be seen as people, not the politics of their country. And after hearing Gody and Omar's stories, I feel like I understand my dad a bit better. And soccer is what connects him to where he's from, and it presents Colombia to the world in a totally different way, a way that doesn't bring up the pain from the past and present.
I'm curious if you asked any of the people that you worked with for the story, you know, if their home countries played Canada in the World Cup, if that would create a conflict internally, like who would they cheer for?
So for both Omar and Gody, it'd be a conflict. Omar said at the end of the day, I'm going to root for Egypt. And Gody, ultimately, he couldn't decide. He said it's a win-win situation for both. I guess he would just be cheering every time anybody touched the ball.
And what about your dad?
Well, my dad, when I asked him, here's what he had to say. So you probably don't need a translation for that. But yeah, my dad is Colombia all the way. And unfortunately, we did get eliminated this week.
Oh, I know. And penalty kicks, too. Your dad must have been heartbroken.
It was painful for him to watch. It was painful for me to watch. But I still think that many people are proud of how well they played and how they were able to show the world a different side.
Yeah, and as you said with this morning's story, put the spotlight on the people.
Yeah,
and the joy of the people, and the pain of the people, but not always just about the politics. Appreciate you coming in with this, and thank your dad as well.
Of course, thank you so much, Marcy.
That's CBC Sofia Peralta Baron speaking with the CBC's Marcy Marcusa.
Local news is in decline across Canada, and this is bad news for all of us. With less local news, noise, rumors, and misinformation fill the void, and it gets harder to separate truth from fiction. That's why CBC News is putting more journalists in more places across Canada, reporting on the ground from where you live, telling the stories that matter to all of us. Because local news is big news. Choose news, not noise. CBC News.
7:23 right now. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. And coming up later this hour, we are going to be talking to the executive director of the Winnipeg Folk Fest about the heat. But then after 8 o'clock, we're going to continue talking about Folk Fest because there is a band that lots and lots of people are talking about right now. We're talking about Angine de Poitrine. And if you haven't heard about them, they are considered a math rock band. And they have kind of a unique sound to them. They maybe some people might describe it as maybe kind of weird, out of this world. They dress in polka dots and kind of look like aliens, but they have led to some record-breaking crowd numbers, particularly in Montreal. They actually broke the Montreal Jazz Festival's attendance record for a concert. It's just wild, and they're going to draw a big crowd tonight. So we're going to talk about what their appeal is with the guitarist of Winnipeg's own Royal Canoe. That's coming up after 8 o'clock. So stay tuned for that. And of course, we're going to play some Angine de Poitrine as well. But right now, though, let's talk morning sports with Scott Reguer. Good morning.
Hey, Corey.
So let's start with the Bombers here. There'll be an old name at quarterback for the Bombers tonight.
Yeah, in his second tour of duty with the Blue and Gold, Corey, Drew Brown will be behind center this evening. They will face the Argos. Brown was picked up in a trade with Ottawa a couple of weeks ago. Before his time with the Red Blacks, Brown played with Winnipeg, although when it comes to starting, he only ever did that on the road with the team.
Played a lot of football since then. Feel like I've refined a handful of things, but at the end of the day, I still feel like a kid that gets a chance to play a kid's game. So just really excited for the opportunity. I never necessarily got to start a game here. I always would come in relief, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Brown's 29 now and is known for his accuracy and leading his receivers very well, which is good news for the likes of Nick Dembski and Ontario Wilson and company. Brown and the Bombers might need to light it up tonight, Corey. They're facing a Toronto outfit that has seen its quarterback, Chad Kelly, lead them to an average of 4 touchdowns a game. So might be a lot of points tonight when it's going to be very hot. Kickoff is at 7:30.
All right. Well, let's talk World Cup now, where we know our first semifinalist.
We do, and to the surprise of very few, Corey, it is France. The world's top-ranked team beat Morocco yesterday 2-0, a decision that might have been far more lopsided had Morocco's Montreal-born goalie Bono not stood on his head at times, not literally. This is the third straight World Cup Les Bleus have made it through to the semifinals, and their coach for each of them, Didier Deschamps, was asked whether this time feels a little different.
What changed compared to 2018 and 2022? Well, in 2018, nobody gave us a chance. In 2022, typically the defending champion is doing well to even get as far as the round of 16. This time, everyone has had their eyes on us from the very first match. But the players have this ability to put things into perspective when they need to. But for now, the only date we have in our minds is the 14th. And that is a very special day for France, Bastille Day.
Bastille Day, France's national holiday, which celebrates the storming of the Bastille and the end of absolute monarchy. Ironic, Corey, since Les Bleus are the closest thing to footballing royalty we have on the planet right now. France will face the winner of today's match between Spain and Belgium.
And that's not the only World Cup match we have to look forward to this weekend.
No, Saturday is going to be a footballing dandy of a day. Defending champs Argentina will face Switzerland, while before that, a certain blonde, ponytailed Viking will get set to make his latest contribution to this tournament. So that's the song Manchester City fans sing in honor of their striker Erling Haaland, the planet's most lethal goal scorer. Although he's been doing that for Norway at this World Cup, Corey, he might have been doing it for the team he'll face tomorrow, England. Haaland was born in Leeds, where his dad, Alfie, played for Manchester City. So did Erling ever consider tying his allegiance to Old Blighty?
I lived there for 3.5, 4 years, and I lived in Norway for such a long time, so then it was natural for me to choose Norway. You never know how it would be if maybe my father played longer in England or whatever. Maybe I would be English, I don't know, but I'm Norwegian and I'm proud of it.
A Norwegian, Corey, who during this World Cup has become an internet sensation. Among the many videos of him that have gone viral is a 19-second long clip of him playing against Brazil. The camera just follows Haaland when he's off the ball, and it shows him feigning disinterest in what's going on. He's just walking around the pitch, seemingly not paying attention. And then at the last possible moment, this 6'5" assassin bursts into action. He leaps in the air. He heads the ball into the Brazilian net. The type of skullduggery he's become famous for, Corey, the cunning approach honed in part by his relationship with chess grandmaster Magnus Carlsen. Haaland and he are not just Norwegian compatriots, but very close friends. And Haaland says the conversations he's had with Carlsen have informed his footy career, where he's always thinking a few steps ahead.
Fascinating.
Well, so.
Thank you very much, Scott.
You betcha.
That is Scott Regehr with your morning sports. 7:29 right now here. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. And still to come, a local cider company might find your backyard apples very appealing. The owner of Next Friend Cider will join us to tell us why he wants your backyard fruit. That's coming up after your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's already 20 degrees. Still have a ways to go before we start to sizzle. A high of 30 in Winnipeg today. Mostly sunny, although we do have a risk of a late-day thunderstorm. Thousands of people are converging on Birds Hill Provincial Park for the 51st Winnipeg Folk Festival, and all this heat could make for some weary campers. Temperatures are expected to soar into the mid-30s. The Humidex Sunday could reach 45. Logan McConomy says he has all he needs to beat the heat.
We just bought a big water jug from Canadian Tire. We went out there, got it, we're ready. Just bring lots of water. You need water. Like working in a garden center, I'm in the heat all day. Sunscreen, water, shade when you can get it. Like, gotta scout out the areas where you can get shade at the stages, camp there, and you're good.
Folkfest organizers urge people to visit the first aid tent if the heat becomes too much. And as always, rain or shine, the festival, they say, will go ahead as planned. Now, the city of Winnipeg wants to help people stay cool during these days of intense heat. 9 hydration stations are set up throughout the city, and people can cool down and get water at any civic facility during operating hours. Some community centers are also set up as cooling spaces. As well, indoor pools and outdoor spray pads are open. A lodge owner affected by flooding wonders why he hasn't heard more from Manitoba's premier. The Canada Day long weekend was a washout for Wellman Lake Lodge in Duck Mountain Provincial Park. Owner Cam McIntyre took to Facebook expressing frustration about a lack of communication over disaster financial assistance. He noted people haven't heard from Premier Wab Kinew since July 2nd, so he posted an AI-generated cartoon modeled on Where's Waldo, but asking instead, where's Wab?
We've been asking for help from provincial politicians and stuff, but we haven't heard anything back yet as to whether there is going to be any sort of help for us.
When asked about his low profile over the past week, the Premier's office says the province is sending more staff to some of the flooding areas to help process insurance claims and financial assistance applications and access flood recovery programs. Doctors in Dauphin are looking for ways to deliver acute care outside the local hospital. That building is going to be closed, possibly for months, after specialized equipment was damaged in flooding. Now people wonder what they'll do in an emergency. They don't know if tests like MRIs will be delayed. Bitu Malik is a radiologist with Doctors Manitoba. She says the Dauphin Hospital serves 55,000 people. Malik says it's important to restore services in Dauphin, not only for patients, but to ensure no doctors leave.
The sooner we bring back our services safely, open up our services here, the better we can have our physicians stay here. If we start to see our physicians leave, it's going to be very difficult to bring them back.
The flooding in Dauphin has claimed the National Ukrainian Festival. In a release posted on social media, the Board of Directors of Canada's National Ukrainian Festival says it's decided not to hold it at the end of this month. It says although the Selo Festival site was not directly affected by flooding, other services in Dauphin were. All 2026 purchased camping passes can be rolled over for the 2027 festival. A harm reduction program manager says government funding could help her better tackle the health crisis in Island Lake. This week, leadership of the 4 First Nations in the region jointly declared a public health emergency. A toxic drug supply, problematic substance use, HIV, hepatitis C, and homelessness, all causing a breakdown in community safety. Kirsty Muller leads the Anshininu Mobile Addictions Network, offering harm reduction services in Winnipeg and in the nations themselves.
We kind of have our hub clinic here, so we can see people if they travel to Winnipeg, if they are able to travel to Winnipeg, we can see people in our clinic here. And then we also go to Garden Hill and continue to go to Red Sucker Lake as well.
Nation leadership says in the past 9 years, there have been 93 diagnoses of HIV, and toxic drug use has become widespread. An analysis by CBC News reveals dozens of Canadian senators are missing votes on government legislation. In the 12 months since the last federal election, the Senate convened for just 76 sitting days, total. Our analysis found only 8 senators out of 105 had perfect attendance in that time. Some missed more than 50 sitting days. Senate sources also add while some senators showed up to be marked present, they routinely leave before votes are held. The spotty attendance means some legislative changes pass with barely half of all senators casting a vote. You can hear more on this story and other national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Hail claims are backing up at auto body shops across Winnipeg. Manitoba Public Insurance says more than 30,000 claims have been opened in the last month because of damage from severe weather. Peter Posilipo owns Finish First Auto Body.
Right now, we're booking middle of September now to get an assessment done. And then when to get the car in to get fixed, we could be another month and a half away to get that done as well, too. So it's just it's a major backlog.
Posilipo says the work of pulling out dents is tedious and can take 3 to 4 days of vehicle. He says some have been written off because the hail damage is so severe. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at your CBC News Desk. And Abby Adeyemi is in now with a look at your very spicy forecast.
Yeah, spicy forecast. You'd see we have air quality warning in place for the north from Flin Flon all the way towards Tuduli Lake this morning due to shifting wildfire smoke, and this is impacting visibility and of course breathing in that area. While for the south, we're under this special weather statement ahead of this long duration of heat wave that will be starting on Saturdays, where we see temperatures feeling close to 45 in the region. For the Red River Valley region at this time, Winnipeg and nearby sitting under beautiful sunny conditions before we see the clouds roll in later. We're looking at late afternoon thunderstorms also in the mix. Current temperatures sitting around 20 degrees at the Forks, and we're tracking 18 at the airport. We are heading to a hot high of 27 today with a muggy humidex of about 32 before dropping to 18 overnight as we see some incoming showers before Saturday where we hit that 34-35 degrees. For other regions, also clear stats in the south with mild winds, passing clouds present. In the Pembina Valley region, Morden is seeing sunny conditions at 16 at this time, aiming for a high of 30. Brandon is mainly sunny at 16, aiming for a daily high of 28. Over in the Parkland region, Dauphin sits at a sunny 16 at this time, expecting a high of 27. In the Interlake region, we find Gimli sunny there, 17 at this time, the forecast to reach a high of 29. Then we go into the northern part of the province where we have this smoke and mild winds really covering most of the region, temperatures ranging from 14 to 17. In the central part, sunny around the part of Flin Flon, we're looking at temperatures of 16 degrees in that part of the province, aiming for a high of 27. Norway House is also around 17 degrees, aiming for 27. Then we look at Thompson towards Tudula Lake. We're seeing 14 degrees there, light rain falling, smoky air, high of between 21 and 24 later in the day. Then we see cloudy conditions around the Lynn Lake area. It's also mostly cloudy in the Gillam area. Both regions sitting around 15 degrees, aiming for a high close to 23 degrees. And way up in the Churchill area, we're seeing mainly sunny skies at 14. We're tracking towards a high of 21 today. So it's more about the province seeing smoky northern rain with hot, clear southern skies. And of course, this intense weekend heat on its way to the south. But for the city right now, we're enjoying sunny stats. We're aiming for a hot high of 27. Current temperatures 20 degrees at the Forks.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
And Sierra Sanders is in with a look at your commute, which is fairly Friday and summer-esque so far.
I would say so, yeah. But I did get a call from Ray, so I'm not completely lonely on the commuter line, which is kind of nice. It's nice to know that I'm not alone there. He called me to let me know about some lights that were out on Abenogi-Mi'kmaq, and there was actually 2 sets that he was mentioning. So they're kind of right as you come off of Lajmodiere there, and you're heading onto Abenogi-Mi'kmaq, heading west. So the first 2 sets there he mentioned as you come onto Abenogi-Mi'kmaq are there. So de la, pardon me, I'm not a resident of Island Lakes, de la Signorie? I don't know if that's how you say
Seigneurie?
it. Seigneurie. My apologies to the folks out there. If you know how to properly say it, I will gladly take your call on the CBC commuter line, as well as Island Shore there. Both of those sets of lights are out. And you mentioned that it was kind of starting to back up there. So keep that in mind. 2 sets of lights out there on Abenoji-Mi'kmaq just as you're coming off of or going on to Lagimodiere there. So keep that in mind. If you have any updates on anything going on, 204-788-3093 is the number to call.
Thank you very much, Sierra. That is Sierra Sanders, our studio director. Well, 7:40 right now here on Information Radio. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Well, for our next guest, it's the most wonderful time of the year. It's when he asks the community to bring in their backyard fruit so it can be turned into cider. Jesse Oberman is the owner of Next Friend Cider, and last year they turned 60,000 pounds of fruit into the drink, and they say bringing your backyard fruit to them is the best way to make sure it's used. And Jesse joins us now in studio. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
So just take us back a little bit, because I think we actually had you on the show when you were just getting started. How much has it grown in terms of, since you got this initiative started of taking people's backyard fruit and turning it into Next Friend Cider, which you have a bunch of cans beside you here right now if you're watching on YouTube?
So we started in 2020. And that first year was really just my neighbors and their friends and their cousins. And I had no intention of starting a business. I grabbed some fruit from a couple apple trees in my neighborhood, and word traveled fast that there was a guy that would take your apples from you and turn it into cider. I ended up with a little more than I could handle that year. And I met the good folks at Low Life Barrel House, and they invited me to start working out of their space. So that's where I work today. That first year, I think we did a couple thousand pounds, 4,000 or 5,000 maybe. Fast forward to last year, where, like you mentioned, we brought in just over 60,000 pounds of backyard fruit.
And how much does that translate into actually like cans or liters of liquid or like?
It's a
cider?
lot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like, and now, and it is a business now, right? Like you got these nicely branded cans beside you. I've seen your stuff in stores across the province now. How big of a network do you have now of people willing to give up their fruit?
Well, we're very lucky. So we're at quite a number of liquor marts, restaurants, private wine and beer stores as well, which is great. And, last year I actually stopped taking a list once we hit 500 households. So I have full-time pickers every summer that you can contact us and we'll do our absolute best to come and pick your tree. And once we hit 500 addresses, we realized there's just absolutely no way we can make it to everyone. It's been great. Coming on CBC is huge for us to get to share the message that we're looking for people's fruit. But there's a lot of people out there with backyard food waste that we do our best to use, and we just can't make it to everyone anymore.
So it's actually so you don't even really need to get the word out even that much nowadays. It's just like that is.
Well, it's still nice to talk.
I'm sure. So, but there must be a particular challenge. I imagine like someone a traditional cidery who maybe has a nice orchard of apples. They can control how many apples. They know what's going on. They know exactly the breed of apples they're working with, things like that. But for you, it's kind of a little bit of a toss-up every year, I imagine. What are some of the challenges of not being able to control necessarily what your inputs are, like into your final product?
Yes, our greatest challenge is not knowing how much cider we're going to make, and not knowing how much cider we're going to have to sell, and not knowing, how we're going to maintain our customers and all that stuff. That is a great challenge. We've been lucky every year that we've actually grown a little bit. There was a couple years where I just got so much fruit that I had to say no. I didn't have enough tank space. We were running out of space in our fridge. I think we're finally over that hurdle where I have enough equipment to make, last year, 60,000 pounds. The year before that was 35,000. So it was a huge jump. Last year was the first year I didn't refuse any fruit. We actually took everything that came in the door, and I'm hoping we can do that forever.
Mm-hmm. And people might be surprised to hear, pretty much like a lot of these ciders is mostly Manitoba grown fruit. Like do you have to supplement a little bit with stuff from outside or no?
So I work with a couple organic farms, but by and large, everything is coming from, probably 90% of our fruit is coming from folks with backyard apple trees. We start, July 15th is like our official start date for accepting fruit. That's usually a little bit too early, but I know people are anxious to get the fruit off their trees. The best fruit comes in August and September, always. And we go usually to the end of October when those beautiful Kerr apples come in. I don't know if you've seen those. They're about the size of a golf ball, maybe a little bit bigger. They get really, really dark maroon. And when you press them, the juice comes out red. It's just beautiful. And it's a true Manitoba apple variety. It was developed in Morden at the research station there before it got shut down.
And so tell us, so you got one here called Pink that you
Yes.
make. So what all is in that? And just tell us like the story of what goes into
Okay.
to developing something like Pink.
So we have two ciders really make up the bulk of our production. Press On is the first one. It's 100% apples. We don't use any other ingredients. We don't use sulfites. We don't filter. It's 100% apples. It's carbonated in the can, and that's it. And Pink is everything else we get. So sour cherries, choke cherries, plums, apricots. When I started this, I didn't know that we grew beautiful Manitoba apricots and plums and raspberries, blueberries, anything that comes in the door. I also work with quite a lot of foragers, so people that go out looking for choke cherries and more interesting stuff that's out there. And we do all our fermentation separately and blend it together at the end. So Pink does change year to year more so than our other ciders. But the point is that it's the color pink. It's a rosé cider. We call it sort of like a fruit punch cider. And that one's made from all Manitoba ingredients, which we're just thrilled by.
Wild. And I'm even wondering in terms of how this impacts your business philosophy going forward. How difficult is it to scale a business that's dependent on just, people's backyards?
Right.
Essentially?
So I always tell people Next Friend Cider is a food waste company masquerading as a cider business. The primary mission is to reduce food waste, help, raise some awareness about all the food that's going to waste out there. We're playing a very small part in helping to reduce that. There are organizations that do a much better job of it. They just don't make booze. So it's like we have an easier time sharing our message because people are like excited to drink an alcoholic cider. But it's a huge problem. And we do whatever we can with apples and cherries and things like that. But there's a lot out there that we can't save. And that's a bummer.
And for people who maybe are listening, they have an apple tree in their backyard, something like that. What's your pitch to them? Do they make money off it?
Yeah, so everything that comes in the door we pay for. People on Reddit are always dunking on me and saying like, oh, he gets free stuff and he's making money off it. Part of our mission is to assign a fair value to food to help support and build a more sustainable food ecosystem. So everything that comes in the door, we apply the same price to, whether you're a farmer, someone with a backyard. Often we have people coming in and saying, I don't want any money for it. It's only 15 or 20 pounds or whatever. What we do is we take the value and we just donate that money to charity. And we also have a portion of sales that are donated to charity. Every year, we work with groups like Main Street Project, Chef Ben Kramer's Made with Love, Direct Farm Manitoba. We've worked with Norwest Community Center. So there's a lot of other like really important organizations in the community that we want to support. We feel like, I've been supported for 6-7 years now by all these wonderful people that are bringing in fruit, and we're trying to just give a little bit back as a part of our.
And what would say 10, 20 pounds of apples get someone if they have
So we do also trade. So some people like money, some people want to donate, and some people want to trade for cider when it's ready in the spring. So if you bring your apples in August, usually our cider will be ready in maybe May or June for you. A milk crate of apples is about a can or two usually.
Okay.
Yeah. So, a mature apple tree can have 400 or 500 pounds on it.
Okay. Oh, good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jesse, thanks for your time. And finally, if people want to reach out with their apples, how do they get in touch?
So the company's called Next Friend Cider. I've got a website, nextfriendcider.com. I'm on Instagram, though I'm not very active on there. I'm sorry. The best way is to send me an email, info@nextfriendcider.com. And there's also, you can just come on down to Low Life Barrel House. We're right by Confusion Corner in the city center. And new this year, we actually have a restaurant. So people that are coming down to drop off fruit used to stay for a drink, which we love. But now you can come by and have a bite to eat at Snack House. It's a really fun little spot. We just made it onto the top 100 list on the Canada's Best. So we're all feeling really excited about that, and we're excited to share it with people.
Awesome. Well, Jesse, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is Jesse Oberman. He's the owner of Next Friend Cider, and they start accepting fruit on July 15th.
Little leather-bound rocking horse taking me home. Baby, walk along. This is all just for miles. Everyone we ride by can't help but smile. Little leather-bound rocking horse wearing me out. Baby, baby, don't be cruel. Do I look like a jockey now, baby? Slow down. Sometimes I think of using you for fuel.
That's Rocking Horse from Tommy Douglas Keenan. He'll be performing at the Salamander Summer Music Festival in Brandon. And speaking of that festival, we did have a contest going on this week. We asked you to tell us your favorite musical memory, and we do have a winner. Congratulations to Loretta. Here's her musical memory. She says, I had just bought a little tape recorder when I was 10. I convinced my mom to sing with me onto it. When I rewound the recorder to listen to our beautiful harmonious rendition, it sounded like two cackling hens. We never sang together again. I'm not sure I ever used that recorder again. I was so disappointed in its recording ability. So it was actually the recorder itself, I'm guessing, that made you sound poorly. I'm sure you sounded like beautiful angels. Well, congratulations there to Loretta. You won tickets to the Salamander Music Festival in Brandon. And well, speaking of music festivals, of course, thousands of music fans are in Birds Hill Provincial Park right now for the Winnipeg Folk Fest, but the heat could be melting away some people's weekend fun. Environment Canada has issued a special weather statement warning of a long-duration heat event, it's calling, for much of southern Manitoba. Temperatures could reach as high as 30 degrees by later today, and on Sunday, the forecast is calling for a high of 37, but the humidex values could make it feel much hotter than that. The CBC's Mike Arsenault was out speaking with some folk festival goers yesterday, asking how they plan to beat the heat. And here's some of what they had to say.
I'm Gavin Doyle Gould.
I'm Logan McConomy.
You like shower constantly, always have water around you, stuff like that. Sunscreen's important, yes.
We just bought a big water jug from Canadian Tire. We went out there, got it, we're ready. Just bring lots of water. You need water. Shade when you can get it. Gotta scout out the areas where you can get shade at the stages, camp there, and you're good.
And then just move with the shade as the sun goes in.
Agreed.
As the day goes on, you gotta just inch your way in. It's good.
My name is Zafar Sakrani. Drink lots of water, take time in the shade, get good sleep, and wear some sunscreen. Even I burn once in a while. Yeah, and just go with the flow.
That's Folk Fest goers talking about their plans to keep cool this weekend. Now, joining me now is Valerie Shantz. She's Executive Director of Winnipeg Folk Festival. Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's talk about this heat. So, what's in place right now to make sure people stay safe with these, really high temperatures forecast?
Mm-hmm. We have a lot of infrastructure on site that is there to try and mitigate some of the heat. We are an outdoor festival, though, so whatever happens outdoors is happening to our fans, and we know that we have free water on site throughout the site. There's big flags up so folks know where to find water. Over time, we've been adding more and more shade tents to the site, in addition to the really long-term plan, which is that we've been planting trees for decades now, and we continue to plant trees every year just to try and make those sites even more shady all the time. We have a first aid tent on site so that if folks are feeling unwell, they can go and visit that tent. And we also have 2,600 volunteers, and many of which are trained to sort of watch out for folks and talk with them if they appear to be needing some assistance, and encourage them to go to the first aid tent where they can get in the shade, cool off, get the attention that they need.
And who's staffing those first aid tents? Is it professionals themselves? Are they volunteers or?
So it is a volunteer staff tent. It does happen that many of the folks who staff it have professional designations in the rest of their lives. They're nurses and doctors. But when they're at the Folk Fest, we ask them to act like standard first aid deliverers because there's a limit to a level of kind of health services that we can provide on site. But we know that our fans get our audience get excellent care because they can assess, and if we feel like if they need more help, that they can call EMS and have someone come to the site. I will say that is in a very few cases. The vast majority, more than 90%, I think it's like 95% of the folks who visit the first aid tent, we can help them out so that they can stay at the festival and enjoy their time there. But there's always that remaining folks who might need a little more help, and we're certainly mindful of the weather this year and hoping that all the things that we have in place and the ways that folks prepare themselves to be at the festival will mean that people can stay safe.
I know in the past there have been calls to have paid paramedics. Like you said, there are doctors and nurses in their everyday life who are volunteering. But why not just have paramedics on site ready to go for that? Say that extra 10% that might need that more immediately. Right.
And it isn't 10%, but that's fine. We don't. Well, I mean, the main reason is that even if we were to hire a service to have paramedics stationed on site, because you can't just hire EMS paramedics to sit there in an ambulance. Even if we were to hire that kind of a service, put it on site, they wouldn't be allowed to leave the site. So what happens is, if someone is needing that kind of care, we would still need to call EMS to send an ambulance in anyway to remove them, to take them to a facility where they can receive that care. We're a temporary 4-day event, and so we're really mindful of what is it that we do well, and also what can we safely offer on site for folks. And so we work with EMS throughout the year to consult with them, and did over this last year. And there's real agreement that this is the right model for an event of our size. And so our job is to work with other providers to make sure that they can have access to the site as soon as they need it and can navigate it. And again, it's very rare. So it isn't something that we're constantly dealing with.
And finally, here in the last minute or so, is there a temperature threshold? Is there a number that would lead to potential, cancellations or anything like that?
No, I mean, we really are. Our main approach is that we are constantly educating our audience. So we have an extremely well-used app in which we send out notifications about what's going on in the weather and anything else that we think our audience needs to be aware of. So we are also doing a lot of public messaging with them about, it's hot out there. If that's the case, remember to bring this, remember to bring that, keep drinking water, avoid energy drinks. They will dehydrate you. So we do a lot of public messaging so that people can make the right decision for themselves about whether it's a good event for them to participate in today or not. That's not a decision that we want to make for the entire audience. They really are the best to make a decision about what's right for them.
Well, Valerie, thanks for your time and all the best with the rest of the festival.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Valerie Shantz is the executive director of Winnipeg Folk Fest. The festival is running now through Sunday. And coming up after 8, we're going to talk about one of the bands building some big hype. And they are called Engine de Poitrine. And we're going to be talking with the guitarist of Royal Canoe about why there's so much hype around that band. That's coming up after 8. I'm Corey Funkin from Marcy Marcusa. Stay tuned. We'll be back after World Report.
Hi, I'm Jill Deacon, sitting in for Tom Power. Imagine performing one of your very favorite songs in front of the person who wrote it. Alison Russo will tell you about playing both sides now in front of the legendary Joni Mitchell, an artist she describes as intergenerational.
She transcends everything.
Q, this morning at 10.
10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Catherine Cullen. Do you know what a loneliness influencer is? They are on the rise all over social media, showing what life looks like when you embrace solitude. We'll talk about what this means at a time when people are grappling with loneliness. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Willie Lowry. A new investigation shows that some of Canada's laws are being passed by a nearly empty red chamber. A CBC News analysis of Senate attendance records reveals that dozens of members are routinely missing key votes, with some legislation passing with barely half the room voting. For more on who's skipping out, we go to the CBC's JP Tasker in Ottawa. So JP, what have you been finding?
We crunched the numbers to find out just how often senators were casting votes in the upper house, and what we found is regular absenteeism. Dozens of senators are routinely missing big votes on some of the government signature legislation. In some cases, only 50, 60, 70 senators out of the 95 or so sitting members are weighing in on whether to pass bills. Bills like hate crime legislation, the budget, spending measures, changes to immigration rules, and the like. In the 12 months following the last federal election, the Senate sat for just 76 days. Only 8 senators have had a perfect attendance record over that period. The rest were away anywhere from 1 to 54 days out of the 76 for other public business, for time off, or because they were sick. And it's raising concerns. The Conservative Senate leader Leo Husako is telling me if attending the Senate for 3 days a week is too burdensome, then it raises legitimate questions about whether these senators are in the appropriate place for them.
What's being done about this?
Well, not much. Senators are, of course, appointed. They don't face the electorate. And after Justin Trudeau's reforms, virtually all of them sit as independents. That's left these senators as lone wolves, able to do what they want. But what Prime Minister Mark Carney is doing now is overhauling the appointments process, saying after 10 years of appointing mostly nonpartisan senators, people with more political experience are needed now.
We look at the Senate as a whole and what the competencies are, and obviously familiarity with government, familiar with legislative processes, other things are helpful, but we want some core competencies in there as well.
I'm told some senators are also reviewing how to encourage participation when they return in the fall to a place that's supposed to be the chamber of sober second thought.
Thanks, JP.
Thank you.
The CBC's JP Tasker in Ottawa. Fresh data out this morning shows Canada's job market is holding its ground, and it's doing so just ahead of a critical interest rate decision. Business reporter Anis Haidari has a closer look.
Fairly flat is one way to describe today's report from Statistics Canada. The labour force survey for June of this year shows 18,000 more jobs in Canada compared to the month before. That's a 0.1% increase. The unemployment rate dropped down by the same percentage. This is a slight but steady uptick after May. In that month, there was an unexpectedly high jump. The StatCan report also showed a slight jump in people working in the private sector for the second month in a row. Actually, the agency says over the past year, employment growth has been concentrated in the private sector. These numbers are the last big data points the Bank of Canada gets when it comes to where the economy is at, before we hear a decision on the central bank's policy interest rate next Wednesday. There's many economists predicting that trend-setting interest rate won't change. Interest rates are often shifted by the Bank of Canada to try and tackle inflation or to stimulate the economy. And while there's an improvement in jobs compared to a few months ago, this flat data for June could mean policymakers still wait and see how things develop. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Calgary.
The search continues across Western Canada and the Territories for a missing 6-year-old boy. An Amber Alert remains in effect for Lanakai Morrison, who was taken Tuesday from northwestern Alberta. Police say he was spotted yesterday morning in Fort St. John, BC. He is with his mother, Krista Morrison, her partner, Daniel Ludwig, and another child. They're in a red 2006 Ford F-350 with Alberta plate CXW 8820. Federal regulators are moving against a BC fishing charter company currently under investigation for a fatal sinking last month. Transport Canada has formally detained another of the company's vessels, citing serious safety deficiencies and registration failures. For the latest on the situation, we're joined by the CBC's Linda Ward. Linda, what can you tell us?
Well, this is the sister vessel of the Top Ocean that sank on June 28th. You'll remember the 9-meter fishing boat that went down, 10 people on board, none wearing life jackets. 4 were rescued, but 1 woman later died in hospital, and 6 people, all in their 20s and 30s, are still missing and presumed drowned. Well, now a second, larger vessel owned by the same company has been seized by Transport Canada. The order on this second vessel says it's being detained for violations or safety deficiencies, and that it's actually a pleasure craft being operated as a commercial passenger vessel, and it's also not registered or marked properly.
And what are we learning about the owner and operator of these boats?
So the order identifies the owner of these vessels as Leah Yin. He runs a company called Top Vancouver Fishing Charter, Inc. Calls to this company were answered by someone named Rocky, who refused to comment. The captain of the sunken boat is 22-year-old Chen Ming. He is among the missing, but his family members have said he previously complained about a broken door that allowed water into the boat, and they didn't know if he was even properly licensed as a charter boat captain. The RCMP are looking at whether it was the boat or the operation of the boat that led to the sinking. The survivors of that fishing trip have been now released from hospital, and their accounts, of course, will be most important to police. Police are also looking to hear from previous passengers about their experiences with either of these boats or this operator.
Thanks so much for this, Linda.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Linda Ward joining us in studio. In southern Spain, the country's military has joined hundreds of firefighters trying to contain a massive wildfire in Almeria. At least 12 people have died, several trapped in their vehicles trying to escape. A regional minister called it the most devastating blaze to date. It comes as southern Europe endures another extreme heat wave. The cause remains unconfirmed, but witnesses say a downed power line sparked the dry brush. A super typhoon is churning through the Pacific Ocean this morning. Typhoon Bavi spans nearly 1,000 kilometers across and is currently tracking to slam into southwestern Japan and northern Taiwan before making landfall in eastern China. For an update on the storm's path, we're joined now by Laura Westbrook in Hong Kong. So, Laura, what's the latest?
Well, this is the strongest storm of the year so far. Bavi has been moving across the Pacific Ocean, and according to the Central Weather Administration, it's packing maximum sustained wind speeds of around 162 kilometers per hour. Now, that is slower than on Thursday, and forecasters say that the typhoon is likely to continue weakening, but it's expected to bring with it strong winds and a lot of rain, particularly to the mountainous areas in central and northern Taiwan. And of course, that carries with it risks of flooding and landslides. And according to local media in Taiwan, this is the largest typhoon Taiwan has seen since 1995. It's expected to pass to the north of Taiwan, also impacting Japan's southwestern islands before moving on to eastern China.
So how are the countries that fall in the typhoon's path preparing?
Well, in Japan, in those remote islands to the southwest, they are part of the Okinawa prefecture, these remote Sakishima islands. Their schools and offices were closed in some areas, forecasters warning of high waves, rain, landslides. They've also grounded a number of airlines, and residents have also reportedly been stocking up on supplies. In Taiwan, also schools and businesses have been closed on Friday. The local government and officials have also been providing residents with stations to collect sandbags, fishing boats. In the harbour of the port city of Geelong, they've been returning to harbour. More than 1,000 people have been evacuated, 20,000 military personnel also on standby. This typhoon is expected to hit the eastern coast of China over the weekend.
Thanks so much for this, Laura. That's Laura Westbrook joining us from Hong Kong. And And that is the latest national and international news for World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. Our top headline on the website is on StubHub's marketplace for fans being run by a mass scalper. I'm Willie Lowry. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. Hope you're keeping cool out there. We got a very spicy and smoky forecast ahead. We're going to get the details from Abby right away here. But coming up this half hour on the show, the Manitoba Métis Federation has purchased yet another major downtown property. We're going to get the details from its president, David Chartrand. He's going to join us live at 8:20. But up first, tonight, the viral polka-dotted math rock duo Angine de Poitrine will take the stage at the Winnipeg Folk Festival. And then at the Montreal Jazz Fest, just last month, the duo drew the largest crowd the festival has seen since Stevie Wonder played in 2009. We're talking at least 70,000 people showed up to watch them. So it's a big deal, and a lot of people are excited about them. We're going to hear why, what the hype's all about, with the guitarist of Royal Canoe, who's been following the band. 8:11 right now. Let's check in with news headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, an improved summer job market for youth helped to improve Canada's unemployment rate. June saw a gain of 18,000 positions. That's the news just out now from Statistics Canada. Enough to push the unemployment rate down nationally to 6.5%. In Manitoba, also a slight improvement in unemployment, down now to 5.4%. The flooding in Dauphin has claimed the National Ukrainian Festival. In a release on social media, the board of directors says it's decided not to hold the Ukrainian Festival at the end of this month. It says although the Salo Festival site wasn't directly affected by flooding, other services in Dauphin were. And this would have been the 61st annual Ukrainian Festival in Dauphin. We'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
That's Heather Wells at your CBC News desk. Abby, what's going on with the weather?
Yeah, we're waking up to a split start this Friday morning. We're seeing smoke impacting air quality up north, while down south we're bracing for the that's intense multi-day heat wave coming our way. But for Winnipeg right now, a beautiful sunny start giving way to a few clouds with breezy high of 27 later. The humidity is going to make it feel close to 32. We're currently seeing temperatures near 21 at this time, and that's what we're seeing across the southern regions.
Thank you very much, Abby. Commute going fine so far, but if you do see something, you give Sierra a call, 204-788-3093. Well, they're masked, they're polka-dotted, and they speak an alien language. And they play music that sounds like this. They are Angine de Poitrine, a math rock duo from Saguenay, Quebec. And the band has recently gone viral, and they're in Manitoba now, getting ready to play the Winnipeg Folk Festival tonight. Bucky Dreger is a guitarist for Winnipeg's Royal Canoe and the label manager for Birthday Cake Media, and he's been following the duo since they blew up online. He joins us now in studio. Hello.
Hello.
So when did you first hear about Angine de Poitrine?
I was totally introduced to them at the same time, kind of as everyone else, when that KEXP session started making the rounds, and
millions
everyone
of
was
views.
really reposting it and sharing it, and we're excited about it.
And what was your initial assessment when you first saw it, heard it? Like, what went through your mind as a musician?
Totally. I mean, I feel like because I've been around as long as I have, there's a bit of baked in skepticism about like the shtick of it all. But as I sat with it longer and longer, it really, you could tell that they were incredible musicians executing something very difficult and doing it with ease and making it sound really great in the process.
And what is it about the music itself that kind of at first, sparked that skepticism?
I think like it's kind of, they come in with this they have a big image. That's a part of their whole thing, is that there's this set, there's these costumes, there's a very like polished but kind of rough around the edges sort of aesthetic to them. And I think sometimes when you see that, you could feel like, oh, this is trying to like make up for something that's lacking in the music.
They're masking their actually poor musicianship, maybe.
Totally. But, as you sit with the music, you quickly realize that no, they are actually like incredibly skilled and weaving together some very complicated ideas into something, honestly, that's verging on so weird that the masses might not get it, but just right in the right sweet spot that it feels really energetic and digestible for people.
Right. And so, and just to paint a picture, folks, it's two musicians dressed essentially like, these polka dot alien people. One's a drummer, one's a bassist / guitarist. And the bass is unique because it actually has way more frets than a normal bass. It's multi-tonal, I think.
Microtonal.
Microtonal.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, and what the music they make is being described as math rock. What is math rock?
I'm probably going to get in trouble because I feel like there's like nerdy debates online about what exactly constitutes math rock. But I think at its core, math rock is really like playing with different time signatures that are maybe unusual, kind of outside of the regular 4/4, 6/8 time signatures. And, maybe even switching up time signatures within a song. So I think there can be this sort of like jilted feeling to it where it's kind of off kilter. But I think the bands that do it the best kind of use that, and it feels natural and groovy, even though they're kind of flipping between these different time signatures.
And I want to talk about that too, because especially when you first listen, it is a bit off-putting. Like your initial is not like, ooh, this is like groovy. Like you need to lay back. You're kind of almost makes you feel a little bit nervous. I know it's Royal Canoe sometimes, especially kind of in certain refrains in your music. We've actually sometimes, full disclosure, be like, hey, we should play this Royal Canoe song, and then we'll get to the refrain, and be like, I don't know, will people turn away? But it's clearly an artistic choice you make to what goes behind that, and from the musician's mindset to make music that might not necessarily be I don't know, easy listening per se.
Totally. I mean, we had moments in shows where we'd be playing some of those choruses and watching people trying to dance, and then the bar sort of flips over and they've lost their spot because it's not quite exactly on, a basic 4/4 pattern. I think for us, like, when we got started, like, that was almost like a challenge to ourselves, is like, can we make 5/4, can we make 7/8 feel groovy and not feel like it's some like mathy thing you need to count in your head, but it still just has like a natural flow and feel. And I think, musicians throughout time have played with that to produce something that feels new and fresh, but people can't quite put their finger on exactly why it feels different. Because hopefully it's flowing out in a way that just feels natural.
And is there even some joy to make people feel like a little bit uncomfortable as well? Is that part, like, sometimes, are you okay with that? Like, is that something you actually seek out sometimes?
Absolutely. I think like so much of popular culture can become quite samey and beige. And I think if you can have these moments where, maybe you're speaking with some of the language of pop culture that people can find their way into a band or a musician or a record, but you can throw in some of these twists and turns to help them kind of pull them out of the norm and, perk up their ears a little bit. That can feel really satisfying as a musician.
And you think that's part of the appeal of Vanishing to Poitrine as well? Does it tell you something about where we're at, culturally right now, where a band like this that is just so out there and sometimes, objectively makes music that is, I don't want to say unpleasant, but makes you a little bit like tense or uncomfortable, still has a lot of people who enjoy it too, right?
Totally. I think like it's kind of been, I think, surprising to me how they've sort of broken into the zeitgeist so quickly and kind of hit the general population. It's not just this like niche musical nerdery thing. And I think, in today's sort of Instagram scrolling culture where there are certain like tropes and formats and visual and audio formats that we know do well in the algorithm, quote unquote, that people are tapping into, and often just to try and get their music more heard and try to bring people into their world. I think maybe people have been hungry for something that feels like it's touching some of those tropes, but really pulling you into something that feels fresh and new and into just, honestly, they've built this world, and I think it's an invitation to come into their whole lore and visual world and sonic world as well.
And I think there's also people are saying there's appeal because their music sounds like it's something that would be AI proof as well. Do you think that that's a true, or do you think AI could be like, I can make music now?
I mean, sure, I don't know how smart the robots are these days, but I do think there's a truth to that statement, which is like, if AI is this distillation of everything that's ever been made, I think it's often going to sort of regress to the safest mean. And so this is something that really is not kind of pushing itself toward the middle. It's pushing towards an edge, and I think that's something that AI is less prone to do.
And before we walked in the studio, you mentioned you're going to be actually at the show at Folkfest, and you mentioned yourself as not a fan but fan curious at this point. You're going to be watching the show. What are you watching for, and what will it take for you to be like, yes, I am all in for Engine de Poitrine?
Honestly, I just feel like this is a band that needs to be experienced live to have like this full sort of conversion moment. There's a certain otherworldly energy to what they do that you need to sort of feel resonate in your chest. And I also think it's going to be really special to experience with a whole bunch of other people. And I always find so much joy in looking around a crowd and watching people's mouths drop and eyes open up and see them having that conversion experience. That's contagious, and I think a lot of people are gonna probably have that.
Especially for the people who came to see some other band, but then now have never heard of them before. That'll be fun to see.
Absolutely.
Well, Bucky, thanks for joining us, and enjoy the show.
Thanks very much.
That is Bucky Dreger. He's a guitarist for Royal Canoe and the label manager for Birthday Cake Media. Engine de Poitrine will be playing the Winnipeg Folk Festival's Big Blue stage tonight at 11:05 p.m. Kind of grows on you a little bit, doesn't it? That's their song Fabienque, by the way. I'm guessing they're going to play that tonight. Well, 8:22 right now. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. The MMF has added another major downtown property to its already sprawling real estate portfolio. After a years-long legal dispute, the Manitoba Métis Federation now owns the National Research Council property on the corner of Ellis Avenue and Balmoral. That's 435 and 445 Ellis, if you're wondering the address. It's had its eyes on the 230,000 square foot set of buildings since 2019. And David Chartrand is the president of the Manitoba Métis Federation. Good morning.
Good morning, Corey.
So what do you plan to do with these buildings now that you bought it?
Well, one for sure is that we're moving, because we have further plans of more investment, but away from downtown. We're looking at building another apartment block and one of the facilities we actually own the building and land is at 2000 Portage Avenue. That infrastructure has been giving us some challenges in the last 10 years based on, I guess, previous development. But now we're looking at moving our child and family services units from there to the office site of the NRC site. So the lab side, we're looking clearly on the opportunity that does exist. We've been meeting with some very well-guided people in this particular field. And one of the things that we're looking at is, first, potentially there was an MRI there before, if people recall. And we're looking at MRI units possibly being put back in there. We're also looking at our own LPN courses to come out of there, licensed practical nurses. And we have that already approved by Cabinet, so we're moving ahead on that. So that those courses and classes will happen there, and we'll probably keep it as an ongoing training facility for that. But the labs, there's 17 labs in there, and clearly there's a shortage that is in hot demand, in my view, because even when we were going to buy it prior, we had Alberta investors seriously looking at the lab side and to rent all of it from us. So from that perspective, it was a good deal for our side. We saw the intent and the need, but it's clearly seeing an empty building like that sitting there when there's great prosperity and opportunity that does exist. So for us, it's helping downtown, helping Winnipeg, and helping Manitoba.
And so how many people, say, from your organization will be occupying that building?
Well, according to my government, I'm not an organization with government, but anyway, from my government, you'll see probably 120 move from the other unit on 2000 Portage, and they'll all move to the office structure side of the buildings. And so that's already underway and under clear discussions. Everybody's aware of the transitional move. And the staff will be quite happy because we did have some serious challenges on the leaking, and every time it rained, we had problems, yet we fixed it and couldn't figure out what was going on with the other building. And so this will be a great opportunity to have our unit really put together. And then, of course, we have child and family structures throughout Manitoba and also throughout Winnipeg.
And any partnerships at all as well with nearby organizations, like, say, like the University of Winnipeg?
Guaranteed. Gino has been a long-time friend of our government, and
that's Gino D'Estasio, the interim president right now.
Yeah, I didn't say his last name because my accent gives me a challenge to say it sometimes. Anyways, he will be there at the announcement, and clearly we have a good relationship with the University of Winnipeg, and they too will, of course, look at the opportunity of how their continued expansion is going forward, and how this research section may be a good opportunity for them. So clearly look forward to ongoing dialogue with the University of Winnipeg. And so I'm very pleased about the opportunity that's there. And then the message to the mayor will be there, I believe. I'm not sure about the premier, but clearly at the end of the day, it's sending a message. We really gotta save our downtown. And it worries me as a leader, the Métis or the founders of Manitoba, and we look at our city today. If you don't have downtown, you don't have no city. I don't care what anybody says, in my view. And if you have suburbia world and you have no core of your who you are and your principles and what you stand for and what you're all about, then why is anybody going to come visit you? So clearly, downtown is essential for the image and for the messaging of who we are as Winnipeggers. And at the end of the day, downtown must survive.
In 2020, you actually offered to buy the property for $14.4 million. 6 years later now, I'm guessing that's changed. What did you pay for it?
Well, let's just put it this way. I said it to the Free Press. They're happy. I'm happy. At the end, that's what matters the most.
Okay, that's not a number you'll give us today, I'm guessing then. I'm curious what this means for the other buildings. So you said 2000 Portage is one place, but I'm even curious, your head office, near the Disraeli Bridge there. Does this mean you're going to be any changes to those buildings, potentially selling anything like that?
No, in fact, that's the first building we purchased in 2000, and that's when I left the Department of Justice in 1996 and became president in 1997, and the MMF was in clear bankruptcy, that $750,000 deficit, and had zero money in the bank. And so I took upon the challenge the people asked me to come and I see what I can do. And I put my mind together and along with my team, and we started organizing my cabinet, and we started looking at plans, and we finally started to get lucky and expand about a year and a half later and started hiring people. And so we needed space, and 150 Henry came along. And that one, if I ever tell you how much I paid for that, Corey, and how that negotiation went, you'd probably charge me for theft. So the deal was very good for us, very lucrative. We did our homework, and that building is our first purchase. My office is situated on the third floor. Mm-hmm. They've been trying to entice me to move to 333 Main now and go on the 21st floor there. The building we own right beside the Bank of Montreal. We also own those two buildings. And I said, no, this is where I started. This is where the Federation really grew from here. This is where I want to stay. And this is where I'm going to continue to be president from.
And finally here, is this kind of finalize your downtown real estate portfolio, or you have your sights set on any other buildings in the downtown?
Well, we're looking at one more. Right now, we're looking at another one, and it's an hotel. We're looking at that.
Which hotel? Can you tell us?
As you know, the Fort Garry's up for sale. We looked at it before. We're back looking at it again, along with some other investors, and we're looking at potentially making an offer. We'll see if the numbers work out. But that's something that we believe is another necessity that we will need in the future as we continue to grow. And the Fort Garry is such a beautiful place, has such an historic significance to our city. And so we're looking at that as a potential offer from myself and a few others that are teaming up right now that are business leaders.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. David Chartrand, thanks for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Corey.
David Chartrand is president of the Manitoba Métis Federation. Time now for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, we're heating up. Already 21 degrees right now. It's going to be sunny. There is a risk of a late-day thunderstorm. Today's high is 30, and we get hotter as the weekend progresses. Well, eager folkies are piling into Birds Hill Provincial Park for the 51st Winnipeg Folk Festival. And the only thing hotter than the musicians, of course, is the weather. Temperatures are expected to be in the mid-30s through the weekend. Add humidity, and Sunday could feel like 45. Zafar Sakrani has gone to Folk Fest for the past 15 years.
It always rains at least once at Folk Fest, so you got to just be prepared for all of the elements. Drink lots of water, take time in the shade, get good sleep, and wear some sunscreen.
Folkfest organizers say rain or shine, the festival will go ahead as planned. They encourage people to visit the first aid tent if the heat becomes too much. Now, the city of Winnipeg wants to help you stay cool. 9 hydration stations are set up throughout the city. People can also cool down and get water at any civic facility during operating hours. Some community centers are also set up as cooling spaces, and indoor pools and outdoor spray pads are open. Some Manitobans dealing with flooding are wondering why they're not hearing more from the Premier. Wab Canoe visited the flood-ravaged parkland about a week ago, but he hasn't spoken to media about the situation since. On July 6th, he posted a video to Instagram encouraging people who were having trouble accessing flood relief funding to contact his office directly for help. Dean Moran and his wife Jackie decided to take Canoe up on his offer after their home in Grandview was engulfed by floodwaters.
I watched Wob on social media saying to get a hold of his office. I phoned his office the next morning and I was told, nobody told us that.
After CBC News contacted the Premier's office about the Morans' concerns, Jackie Moran told us they received a call from a Canoe representative. Doctors in Dauphin are scrambling to care for patients as the local hospital could be closed for months. People wonder what they'll do in case of emergency. They don't know if tests like MRIs will be bumped. Batu Malik, a radiologist with Doctors Manitoba, says the Dauphin Hospital serves an area roughly the size of Prince Edward Island.
This is catastrophic to our center. So we have locally about 10,000 people that rely on the services, but our regional access is close to 55,000 people.
Malik says some services are being provided in local clinics. Doctors are also traveling to St. Rose-du-Lac and Grandview. The flooding in Dauphin has claimed the National Ukrainian Festival. In a release posted on social media, the board of directors says it has decided not to hold the festival at the end of this month. It says although the festival site was not directly affected by flooding, other services in Dauphin were. Well, employment in Canada saw little change in June. StatsCan is out with its labor report for the month. It shows job numbers increased for youth, but declined for those 55 and over. Overall, Canada's unemployment rate dropped 0.1 of a point to 6.5%. Manitoba's rate also improved slightly to 5.4% in June from 5.5% the month before. A harm reduction nurse says her clinic's model is highly effective and needs more money to address health issues in Island Lake. This week, leadership of the 4 Island Lake First Nations jointly declared a public health emergency. They say the region is plagued by homelessness, HIV, hepatitis C, and a toxic drug supply. Kirsty Muller runs the Anshininu Mobile Addictions Network. She says her team is nimble and able to provide services in both Winnipeg and the remote fly-in communities.
We have our own model and policy and procedure for stock medications, supportive medications that we bring with us and get sent to communities. So everything is mobile and travels there.
Mueller hopes for sustained operational funding from the government. Auto body repair shops in Winnipeg say drivers could wait months to get their vehicles fixed after recent hail damage. Manitoba Public Insurance says more than 30,000 claims have been opened since June. Peter Posilipo owns Finish First Auto Body. He's booking damage assessments into September and says it could be another month after that before repairs are done.
What to say? It's just some customers are understanding. Some of them get frustrated and they don't like what we have to tell them. And we say, well, you can try somewhere else. But gosh, like everybody in this industry is completely swamped with all this extra work. So it's just being patient.
Posilipo says his staff have already fixed more than a dozen vehicles. He says the work of pulling out dents is tedious and can take 3 to 4 days a vehicle. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells at your CBC News Desk. Sierra Sanders is in with a final look at your commute.
Yeah, Corey, just got a call from Ray. Thank you to Ray. He's called twice now this morning, so I appreciate the calls. Ray, Sargent in Maryland, there's a 2-car collision there, and that median lane is blocked there. So you can get around there in the curb lane, but you just want to keep an eye out for that. As well, Bomber game tonight at Princess Auto Stadium, so be aware of the heavier traffic there in the area. Kickoff is 7:30.
Thank you very much, Sierra. Abby Adiyemi, hot, spicy, smoky weekend ahead.
Yes, smoky and hot weekend ahead for the province. We have smoke blanket in the northern part of the province, and we have this special weather statement which signals that we're expecting intense heat to be hitting the southern part of the province starting tomorrow. But right now, we're seeing temperatures close to 20s in the south, warming up close to 30 degrees for most regions, and up north, we're seeing temperatures around 18, warming close to 27 up north. But Winnipeg, we're closing shop at 21. We head to 30 today.
Thank you very much, Abby. Well, if you're out there this weekend, hope you have a lovely weekend, but hope you stay cool out there. It's going to be a spicy one. I'm Corey Funkin from RC Marcusa. You're listening to CBC. Up next, The Current. Have a good one.